Good evening and a warm welcome to round 5 of the virtual Belcar series, the 2022 season. We're at the Nürburgring. My name is Hesse Römer. I'm joined by Edward May, the wonderful gentleman, yet again. And we're ready to take you through 3 hours of wonderful action here, Edward, from one of the best tracks around.
Yeah, it is certainly an excellent venue for top-level motorsport. It's a circuit that gets plenty of action across various different disciplines, be it open wheelers, Formula One. We're here just a couple of years back, obviously filling in that COVID-disrupted season. Then, of course, it's something that plays host to various different categories of GT-style racing, as well as actually taking on six-wheelers, trucks as well. On our good friends, Asta and Belcar, who covers the FIA European Truck Series, was here just about a couple of months ago, and it's great to see he gets plenty of action in the sim as well as we come here for the 5th round. Is it the 5th round or is it the 4th round of the virtual Belcar series? It's so strange, it keeps flying by, but I think this is the 4th round.
It's the 5th round.
The 5th round. 5th. I was right the first time. Should always stick to my guns. So yes, it's getting towards the business end of the season now, Hester, as we start to approach the time where all drivers will look, of course, to the end of the year with the 24 of Zolder coming up. That's something that all drivers will be looking for. But before that, they have to get through 3 hours here at the Nürburgring.
Indeed. And it's going to be an interesting one. I think 4 classes of racing here at the GP track.
The main class to watch for, though, is going to have to be BLC2. It's a tight battle with only 5 points separating first from second. ART Sim Racing head of Flemish Sim Sports in that class. Flemish Sim Sports yellow by Veraco there in BLC2. That's something that is going to be very interesting to see how that develops. I think some of the other classes have started to see a few more gaps start to come through. BLC1, there's around about a 15-point gap between first and second. Arnache ahead of Valkyrie competition. Then again, down in BLC3 as well, where we've got a bit more of a BLC3, a bit more of a gap between first from second in that class. Simtag team with around about 40 or so points clear from everyone else. So it seems to be opening up at certain stages, but still in the business end. Good to see some close fights in other classes.
Absolutely so. The 5 points separating ART Sim Racing and Flemish Sim Sports in BLC2 is going to make for an interesting fight here over the last rounds. BLC3, the Simtech E team, is pretty well founded, and so as well in BLC4. So in terms of the overall standings, all eyes is going to be on the Porsche Cup machines, which has turned into be some great racing indeed so far this season. Anyway, Edward, it's time for us to have a look at just how this qualifying's turned out in the end, with Oscar Pai and Valkyrie eSports taking pole position ahead of Arnache competition. I think this is one of the few times we're not seeing Arnache on pole. This is going to be interesting. Jonathan Poulet for Valkyrie in third, and then Olivier Bultink and Sim District by eSports, who's been very much up there all the way through the season in fourth place. Third row, of course, making Håkan Grepstad, joined by Sami Favre, and then Kenny Hermans and Steven Deleersnyder on row 4. Ingemar Andersson is joined by Hans Damians on row 5, with Matti Sufi and Jasper Schoenakers on row 6. Indeed, as we scroll down the machines. Jeremy de Boever, then Renzo Erlenbroek on row 7 ahead of Christoph Raas and Benjamin de Pape, then Jean van Liemt and Philippe Verbert on row 9, with Philippe Vliegen and Laurens Klotz on the 10th row of action there, rounding off the field of BLC 2 machines. Of course, Renzo Erlenbroek there in 14th place, our BLC pole sitter, by the way. Fabrice Cornelis, another pole position and another really good qualifying session here for the SimTag E team, taking pole in BLC 3 ahead of Stuart Reynolds for Sim District, and Thomas Stockmans in that 100 Anage competition BMW, and then Yiri Crispin for Traxxas in 4th place there in BLC 3. In 5th, it's Steven Verhofstadt for Traxxas as well, and then Mohamed Soham. Edward Knight and Kim Behate with Jens Hoosens and Davis Suffeliers there as well. David Toth takes a pole position in BLC 4 for an Ash competition ahead of Thomas Leysens. Then Peter Lemkens, Thomas Robin, and Glenn Grondelars, who rounds off a 35-car field, Edward. And that tells me a thing or two about the fact that we are going to have a closely contested raceway all the way around tonight. There isn't there isn't exactly going to be a lot of space to sort of make your statements tonight, is there?
No, not particularly. It's going to be very tricky with the sheer amount of cars out on the circuit. Like you said, 35-car grid. It'll be interesting to see how the front runners get off. Obviously, Oscar Pai taking, I believe it is Valkyrie eSports' first ever pole position this season. What can they do from there?
Well, so far, it's been an Ash competition on pole, I think, on pretty much every occasion. This is Valkyrie eSports and the 77 car really stepping it up from pole position, and we're about to go green for 3 hours of racing here from the Nürburgring. As we've got the field piling up, it's green, 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 and here we go, and it's a terrible start indeed for Antunes, who, well, they'll be looking into this. I've rarely seen someone get that of a sloppy starting down to the 4th. 5th place, though, as they hit into turn 1, 3 wide there, just about making it, Edward. A lot of action here. I think Matti Sufi's had a bit of a moment. Somebody's gone way wide. That's the Flemish Audi, indeed, of Matti Sufi that's turned around. Jeremy de Boever here, who comes on at the far end of the field for Mac Challenge.be. But Oscar Pai, very good start. Jonathan Poulet making it a 1-2 here early days for Valkyrie competition.
Yeah, it's a very, very good start, obviously, like you say, for Valkyrie competition, but it's very interesting what was going on at the start of the house, so I'm not quite sure if we can make heads or tails of it. It was very weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a lot of action happening, and we will certainly see if we can have just a swift second look here as Sami Favre. Oh, that's Vatlet, Jeroen Vatlet for SimWorld.be fast, and he's gone in the gravel trap. The 88 machine rejoining in 11th place behind the 2 leading Porsche Cup machines. A pretty interesting start here. I think we had a pretty eventful turn 1, to be honest. Let's see if we can just catch a second look here. We had a problem for Jean van Liemt. Look at that. We've seen it before, Edward. The Porsche Cup machines carrying a lot of speed. Someone just coming across the track. That's the ART car. And how he ends up facing the right way, Edward, I have absolutely no idea. That looked absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, your replay seemed to be working, mine less so, but yeah, there are some very interesting goings on at the circuit right now. Thankfully, it all appears to be okay. Although no massive incidents really. There's been a few little things here and there, but thankfully no one coming into the pits with damage.
Luckily so, but I don't know if you saw that. the car of Philippe Verbert there, basically going backwards. Then all of a sudden being spun around by a slight touch, heading the right way into turn 1, and off we go. Well, anyways,
following through. Oh, sorry, I was just to say, just following through some of the other developments in other classes. We do have, of course, Fabrice Cornelis at the head of BLC 3, and it seems to be again that Aston Martin is really quite quick at the moment. Jeremy de Bouver making his way back up through the field after I think an early moment is going to have to clear some of those cars in that class, but. Me, Fabrice Cornelis had a great start.
Brilliant start for Cornelis and the Simtech team. The BMW, it's going to be interesting just how it goes along. I don't think it's going to be that strong, to be honest, here at the Nürburgring. I think it's going to be a bit too technical, basically, and a bit too twisty for the BMW here tonight. And the Anage Competition 100 car here might just struggle a little bit. Of course, Mohamed Soham here with a bit of an issue through the Schumacher S's for the second time. That got a little bit wayward. Oh, and Oscar Pai has been overtaken by Jonathan Poulet. So you have to wonder. And Antunes is passed as well. What has gone on?
He's having to lift. I think he's picked up a slowdown.
Yeah, must be indeed, because Krebstad's gone through as well here. Let's see. Oh, he had a big slide there. He went off to the side, and it does indeed look to me like he's lifting off to make sure that he's not getting a penalty. So it looked so good for Oscar Pai and the 77 Valkyrie car, but an early slowdown, bringing that car back into 5th place now. Jonathan Poulet and the number 7 machine, leading from Håkan Krebstad in the Ignium car here, 26 machine, and then Jimmy Antunes, who will be piling on the pressure for the rest of this race, of course. Great start for Ignium as well, getting up there into 2nd place. And down here in the BLC2 machines, tight action as we expect to see it. Hans Poelman's now leading Renzo Erlenbroek, but in a tightly contested race for the lead at the moment. That is, of course, the Flemish SimSports 999 BLC2 Porsche 911 Cup machine, ahead of the GT Racing by Reland number 12 car of Renzo Erlenbroek. And then Philippe Verbert, who had that big moment coming into turn 1, touching the grass on the brakes, spinning the car around, and then getting a little bit of assistance to aid him and still pointing in the right direction. Hopefully the damage isn't going to be too much to the car. BLC 3, and a bit of a change for position there. Stefan Verhofstadt is slowing down somewhat.
I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Not sure where that could have been picked up. Potentially on the exit of what's sort of called the arena section. When you come through that right hand, you can quite easily pick up a little bit of an off track through there. That might be what we've seen, giving that slowdown. Further back, we are watching currently Kenny Helmans, the lone Audi, surrounded by Lamborghinis. Just been overtaken by Oscar Pai with Sami Favre right up behind. Let's have a look at the replay. This is Oscar Pai just onto the brakes, nice and hard, nice and late. And I think that was as well very good awareness by Kenny not to fight that too hard. He's seen that Oscar has a lot of pace. We know that car was quick, put it on pole, and well, now it's just a matter of trying to keep with him, as he's inevitably going to try and catch back up to that lead pack is Oscar.
Here with Philip Vliegen, 6th place in BLC2, on the tail of Jean van Liemt. Up ahead still a closely contested battle there for 2nd place in BLC1 as well, with Jimmy Antunes on the tail of Håkan Krebstad, the Norwegian driver. Doing a good job not exposing himself in any way, but with 2 hours and 53 minutes still on the clock, pretty much anything could still happen here. It's going to be a good start, though, for Jonathan Poulet in that number 7 car, because any advantage he can grab here early days might give him just that little bit of space, that little bit of calm around him, Edward, and that could just allow him to open up a bit of a gap here that might make it different later in the race.
Yeah, something that was interesting to me is that Jonathan Poulet, who is currently leading the race, I believe is in the Valkyrie Pro car, but the Valkyrie AM car that was on pole position was Oscar Pai. So interesting that both of them are just as quick, because look at that, Chicane tunes up the inside through to turn 1. Now he's going to see what he can do in catching up to race leader. Again, that's Håkon Grebstad, who's basically leaving the door wide open, doesn't need to fight at this early stage race, looks at maybe for run around the outside, but again realises our Irish competition are quick. Our last season's champions and currently leading the championship again this season. It's always smart to try and slot him behind as, oh, that was a little late look up the inside. Olivier Bulting almost coming a cropper there as he makes, I thought for a second, contact with Ingemar Andersen, but good judgment there not to. Just backing out of that move. It's a very difficult corner to try and throw it up the inside. This one's a little bit easier, a bit more of a braking zone. Olivier Bulting makes the move the second time of asking. A little bit squirrely on the exit, but up through the Schumacher S's, he will get the benefit of clear air. Lamborghini in behind will need to lift off just to keep the car a little bit more balanced, especially on these full tanks of fuel, and as such Olivier pulls out a bit more on an advantage, and I was going to say breathing space into the next corner, but Ingemar Andersen almost into the back of him, returning the favour almost. But now Olivier can start to stretch his legs.
Yeah, but Olivier Bulting started in 4th place, so a bit of a surprise to see him having to squabble for 7th. At this point of the race. Must have had a terrible start. I'm just looking down through the event viewer, but to see if I can just figure out...
It's chock full of things, isn't it, Asa?
A lot of stuff having happened here in the space of 10 minutes, making it rather hard to get an overview. There's been a lot of stuff happening. There's Jeremy de Boever, who's trying to come back as well, one of the closer fights. Sami Favre there with the company of Kenny Heremans. He shuts the door on the Audi as well. PSR now in 6th place. A bit of a blinker there for Favre, though, at least on my screen. Hoping that's not for everyone else, of course. I still want to see if we can get a look at just what happened for the Sim District car of Olivier Bulting there.
Yeah, difficult to see. While you keep looking for that, Hasser, I'll be watching this fight through, and I think we've actually found it here.
We might be a bit early here, I think, but hopefully a lot of stuff happening basically before the green flag as well. So I'm just gonna see. Here we go into turn 1. He just gets shoved out on the outside, and that loses him all of those positions. So I think basically just a poor start for Bulting. There's a lot of ground to make up for a car that's been really competitive and a team that's been really competitive throughout the season. They will be finding it, I think, somewhat of a disappointment not to be up there fighting for top places here. Not that the biggest of differences might be made here early days, but it is, after all, a 3-hour race, and even though you could say that any disadvantages lost in the early stages of the race here could easily be made up later on, it's also such a competitive environment, and especially in PLC 1, you really have to be on it. You'll have to be on it in all of the classes, basically, but the competitive environment in BLC 1 this season has been on a high level, and as such there isn't really any room for mistakes, so to say.
Yeah, there is very little room for error, but it seems to me that a lot of those errors have been made early on in the race. Hopefully we won't see many more of them as the event progresses through the evening. They've still got basically the best part of 3 hours to go. Currently on board with Thomas Stockmans in the 100 BMW. A very nice apex up here, and the straight line speed at the top end might give him a run in towards the chicane. I think it will just come a little bit too late for him to fully commit up the inside, as we are using the variant of the chicane that does sort of crush it a little bit more, not quite the sort of World Endurance Championship chicane, rather the Formula 1 Grand Prix style chicane. But it doesn't seem to be a real spot to try and overtake, at least at this stage of the race when the cars are so heavily laden with fuel. Braking zones just are that little bit sooner because you've got a lot more weight to try and slow down.
Yeah, and that's it's been an issue of the BMW as well in general, that it's under braking. It's had a hard time really overtaking. It sort of seems like it has to be done under acceleration, as we saw in Le Mans. It was very strong. But so far, Thomas Stockmann's doing a good job keeping up with the rest of the bunch, except for, of course, Fabrice Cornelis. We've got a solid lead so far over the rest of the field here. Of course, ahead of this is the Decipit Racing Team Machine. They're driven by Mohamed Soham. And we'll see just how this battle develops. An harsh competition, though, by no means left behind. They're just about 0.6 of a second off of Jonathan Poulet.
And that gap's come down. That has really been coming down. I mean, the last lap, if we look at their last laps, it was actually, what was that? A lot of time, pretty much half a second almost, isn't it? Had to take it out
more
on that last lap. Yeah,
6 tenths of a second on a lap there, which is a
lot.
Massive advantage to gain in. Yeah, definitely. And as you see here, they're making their way through traffic already here, 15 minutes into the race. And this is the chaos that we'll be seeing basically for the rest of these 3 hours, and especially as the traffic will be spreading out. Any driver who's ever done endurance racing in any form, either on iRacing or on another sim for that matter, or in real life, will know that it just requires that
Jonathan's going to get it in a really bad spot here. Really difficult coming up now through the chicane. This is going to be so tricky. I thought for a minute he actually managed to clear the Hyundai before, because that was going to be so difficult if he caught it at that worst spot. But thankfully for his race, got through it nice and cleanly, and all of a sudden that gap has started to open up again in the favour of Jonathan Poulet just through the traffic. So we're going to see it work in his favour and then work against him. Of course, that's just the way that these endurance style events will go, as Thomas Stockmann's into the pits very early.
This is sort of a surprise, to be honest, to see Stockmann's coming in at this point. We did not expect so. Has he picked up a penalty at some point? Has he... Oh, we have to wonder.
Might have...
He's just going straight through, isn't he?
In the pits, 15 seconds. So that seems like a 15 seconds not go penalty for something. Maybe not clearing a slowdown in time.
Oh, that's an unfortunate thing to have happen at this point of the race. Of course, you could say it does leave them with the time to really come back, but it's just a disappointment as well here as the leading championship leading. At least Anash car comes through. I was about to say leading. They aren't. We've just been used to seeing that. Here's Hansi Poelmans. A lot of fans of his, I'm sure, will be rooting for the 999 Flemish Sim Sports Porsche. Got a bit of a train going behind with the ART Sim Racing car here of Philippe Febert. And then it's Benjamin De Pape and Jeremy De Boever. But De Boever, of course, in a BLC 1 machine. He would love, I'm sure, to clear these BLC 2 cars as quickly as possible.
It's always so difficult when you are in the BLC 1 class compared to the BLC 2 class in terms of being able to make your way through the traffic, because the cars make their lap in different areas. The BLC 2s make their laps in the straights and with that top end speed advantage. The BLC 1s have got superior downforce and acceleration, which helps them through the corners, but it's a lot more of a tricky place to overtake. It's much easier when you're making moves on cars to use your straight line speed to advantage, because it's easy time to make up on cars around you. But when you're coming through the corners, you can't really drive through them. You have to drive around them, and at that point, even though your car might be quicker through the corners, it's not like you're hot lapping. The car is on the same space of circuit that you're on, and it makes it very difficult.
It's always different if you're in a one-make class like the BLC2s, of course. Even there's... Oh, yeah, there it comes. One move done for the Boover as he moves up on through. Next target is going to be Hans Poelmans. He gets that done relatively quick. You see that straight line speed of the BLC2 Porsches, making it rather
I think
difficult.
there's also a touch of damage on Jeremy's car.
That's a good point. Oh, no, there's more!
That right rear hand quarter does look fairly battered and bruised. We might get a good angle of it as it comes. Never mind, we won't, because we've got a battle on up in front. 0.3 per second between Poulet and Antunes.
A bit of a battle here between Grebstadt and Poulet as well. Through turn one.
Oscar Pai, I believe.
Yeah, that's true, of course. That's Oscar Pai. My apologies. This Grebstadt just showing that there's no real way around, at least for now, as Jonathan Poulet, here he is, in the lead of the race.
Belcar's using all of the runoff on the way into the corners, on the way out of them as well. Trying to look after the tyres as well. If you take much wider lines, you're not having to put as much steering lock in and scrubbing the front end. It's a very front limited circuit, this, the Nürburgring, because of course the sort of long late apex corners that you have to do. You have to be constantly putting steering lock on. That's a little bit too much steering lock, a little bit too much throttle application though from Laurence Klutz just in towards turn one, over rotating, and it's so difficult in these cars. Without traction control, the BLC2s will really have to suffer through that first corner.
And that's generally a thing here. The understeer can feel like a terrible thing as well, but also because you have a tendency to overheat the fronts through both the slower turns and the longer medium speed turners, of which there is quite a lot here at the Nürburgring. We've had a change for the lead here, though, Edward. Look at this here. Dive by Jimmy and Tunes. Oh, Poulet just getting...
Oh, that was smart. That was really smart, actually, from Jimmy, because going up the inside of the VLC3 class car, that car has to yield. Basically, it can't turn in, and by going for the wider line, that basically forces him into the path of Jonathan Poulet. So that is perfectly done. A little bit of gamesmanship, a little bit of a smart head on Jimmy and Tunes there, just to not do anything dirty. He's playing within the rules of the game. He's not done anything wrong there. He's just been very smart with how he's been able to overtake the traffic, and that is something that I think a lot of drivers overlook, is that little bit of a clever head about you to see those opportunities and really seize them by both hands.
But to grab an opportunity like that, it also just, you really need to have a bit in reserve, so to say, as a driver in such a situation. If you're on your limit, you're not going to be able to take advantage of those situations. If you're behind someone who you definitely feel is a bit slower than yourself, or if you have that little bit extra to shoot with, so and say, then you'll be, well, in a better position to be able to make such a move here. Nice little launch as well. Absolutely sending it. Just sneaking on through. That's a few tenths gained on the car of Jonathan Poulet here. The Valkyrie competition number 7 machine was now over a second
Oscar
behind.
Pai has just gotten ahead of Håkon Grebstad there. You can see in the background of the shot, something has gone on in towards the chicane, and they are side by side battling it out in towards turn 1. But Håkon Grebstad, although he's got his nose just ahead, you can see the BLC3 car. That is the Flemish Simsports Aston Martin. Goes up the inside and gets well out of the way, but that was very smart as well by Oscar Pai to use that traffic to his advantage with the inside line. Just have to make it work. But I want to see how this all unfolded a little bit before. It was into the chicane, then out of it. It seemed to be Håkon Grebstad kind of got stuck on the outside curb there. And then the drive out of the corner was going to go in favour, of course, to the Norwegian. He seemed to now just see it there, getting his nose ahead as they go in towards the braking zone. But with the Aston Martin up in front, you can't do anything about it. It has just to concede the position and slot in behind.
So the running order on our competition leads from the number 7 Valkyrie car, then the Valkyrie Excite Rookies machine, and then the Ignium Motorsports car, the number 26 machine, in 4th place, ahead of Sim District, who's moved up into 5th here with Olivier Bolting behind the wheel. My mistake. That's the Sim District Vibe eSport GT3 red car driven by Sami Favre. He's doing a really good job for himself at the moment. Then Kenny Hermans, then Olivier Bolting in the green Sim District machine, still in 7th place. Edward, a bit of a disappointing start here maybe for the green Sim District car.
Definitely not the start to the race that they were hoping for. That is for certain. They were not too far off of the pace realistically, starting in 4th place on the grid, only 5 thousandths from the car up ahead. They could have been easily been on the front row if they found around about half a tenth or so. We're talking very fine margins between them and the pace of the front runners, but it just seems that this early phase of the race has not gone their way. If we're looking at the overall interval, the gap towards the class leaders, it is only 10 seconds. So we've had 23 minutes of running, only 10 seconds behind. That is something that they can make up over the course of a race, but it is going to be very difficult for them. They, of course, have the benefit of their teammate up in front, but maybe not for long after that moment. Coming through the left-hander in towards the stadium section there. So easily done. Just taking too much in this. It's quite easy done the way the car likes to over-rotate, but oh my word, that was a little bit scary, you have to say, if you go on board for the BLC1 class car. Not sure who that is.
55 car, Philippe Fabert there. I'll just try and catch it. Just bear with me for a second here. I'll just try to catch it correctly, so to say. We'll be on board with Philippe Fabert for a few corners. Exits turn 1 here, gets a nice drive into turn 2. No real hassle.
This will be the part where he's looking in his mirrors thinking, oh my giddy arm, what's going on in behind? He's going to give a wide berth into turn 1.
Look at your left here. Oh, another...
See ya.
See you, nerd. That's close indeed, Edward. That's some brilliant reactions by Fabert, managing not to have an accident there. He had a good.
You can tell, couldn't you, that he was looking in his mirrors for that, because you can see he's giving a wide berth into the corner, and then the steering wheel sort of jiggles about in his hands because he realises, oh, good lord, what is going to go on here? And he manages just about to keep himself out of trouble. Oh, he's going to be thanking his lucky stars for that one. Of course, the awareness helping him out massively as well. Up towards the top of the class, BLC1. Fastest lap was just set by Jimmy and Tunes. That's been clawed back by Oscar Pye.
The 55 car, as we saw, was in the pits as well. And that's why they've lost time. They are going to be kicking themselves. They were in a good position, and they made it through a hectic start with a bit of a touch. Very lucky on that moment, but it didn't last for him, you could say. Yeah. This is the battle for second place at the moment with Hansi Pohlmann and then Benjamin de Pape here for B-Sim Racing S, the 192 BLC2 Porsche. It's got a nice run here, but just about short. Coming into the final chicane here now, the final corner, probably not going to be an opportunity. But the Pape is certainly putting on the pressure. It's just 0.3 of a second. The long back straight here might just present a bit of an opportunity. We'll see just about how that goes.
Tracy can go left or right, going to opt for the outside line. Will he dart to the inside as they get out to race? No, opts to go all the way around the outside. If he can make it stick, he will then have the advantage into the next corner. But look at that, very deep into the corner by Hans Pohlmann to cover off any run on the outside, covers off the inside for the next couple of corners, but maybe not so much as look at this up on the inside. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be forced so tight to the corner is Benjamin, but he's going to really open up this next right-hander, go for the switchback to maybe get an advantage into the next corner, but again the door is just getting squeezed on into here. This is not a place where you can send a move and have it come off cleanly, and Benjamin knows it, backs out. Excellent defensive driving there. We're in the front row seats to see almost a masterclass there by Hans Pohlmann.
Yeah, that was just about how it's done, wasn't it? The whole putting your car in a place where you cannot pass it. Well, that's just what Pullmans did there, because he didn't have momentum, but he did have track position. And
Although, having said all of this, it's not necessarily masterclass in trying to catch up to the leaders, as Renzo Ullenbrook has got an almost 8 second, well, now just gone over 8 seconds advantage. He is fully in a class of his own, as we said. No one around him. Look at this. Bit of a nice Sunday drive, it turns out, for Renzo.
we've seen it before when, and especially in traffic, Edward, it's so much easier being on your own than it is sort of being with company, as we saw was definitely the case for both Flemish and B-Sim Racing there before, as they had a bit of a squabble. Because when you're battling someone and you have to take into consideration that there's traffic to pass as well, it just so easily ends up costing you way more time than if there's only one of the two variables to take into consideration. And I think not only does Renzo Ullenbrook have a very good bit of pace about him, but also just that part about having the calm to manage traffic as you like, or giving yourself at least the best opportunities to do so. Look at this, for instance, the Pape. Pullman still clearing the BLC3 machines. Get a bit of a nice wall cam there. But definitely a really good fight here. Pullman's still ahead. He does know how to defend. And he's doing so for his life, but there's 2.5 hours of racing. And with this opening half an hour of racing has absolutely flown by.
It has been absolutely excellent, I have to say, but there has been some moments there where I thought Kenny Heremans was going to get back into a little bit of a squabble, but it seems that gap has started to re-emerge. Kenny Heremans is under pressure from Olivier Bultink, who was closing that gap. It was down to 1.5 tenths of a second, which shows you how close Olivier came to getting back up inside the top 5. Fastest lap of the race, though, pole sitter Oscar Pai, who found himself in a little bit of strife early on in the race, started to claw his way back in. And I tell you what, Oscar is really making a case for him, although he's in the Valkyrie eSports rookie car, to be moved up maybe into the full-fledged outfit, because he is doing a very good job here at the Nürburgring, that is for certain. Seems to be Olivier Bultink just closing that gap all the way down through some of the tight twisty bits, but then it starts to come out again. I think it appears that putting the power down, Olivier kind of has the better measure of the car, but then when you get towards the corners, I think maybe the aero balance is more in favour of the Audi up ahead. We'll see though, because now this is an area where the Lamborghini has been very strong through this left and then the subsequent right, and you can tell because that time has been clawed back down just 1.5 tenths through that left-hander alone.
And interesting to see just how the difference between the Audi and the Lamborghinis play out here. Just 2 Audis in the field at the moment, running in the top 11 cars. And then the Mac Challenge, by DB in 14th overall, 12th in class, driven by Dieter de Vlaming at the moment. Peter Lemkens in the pits in the RP Motorsports GT4 by Cruise Machine. We've had a few incidents there early days. Sami Favre in the pits here as well, so have to wonder just what that's all about. Might be a bit of damage. And we haven't seen much of the TCRs yet, but at the moment it's David Toth here for a nice competition in the 18 car, who's been so good so far this season, with a brilliant advantage as well of about 10 seconds to Thomas Leysen in the Flemish Hyundai. There's Thomas Robin for AC Motorsports AM, the AM machine here, closely followed though by Jelle Verstappen, so a nice little battle in the TLC Force. Apologies for the Berg, Hendrik. I'm drinking Coca-Cola by can, and it came out rather explosively. My deepest apologies for such an A rude moment indeed. Kenny Hermans, though, feeling the pressure from Olivier Bulting, flashing his lights here, sort of frowned upon, I think, by a lot of drivers in a situation like this, Edward. You normally, as a driver, you'd sort of use the headlights to communicate, especially with traffic in a race like this. But, of course, when flashing it at a driver ahead in the same class, it's often just a moment of frustration shining through, isn't it? So I'm afraid we have a bit of an issue there on the part of Edward May at the moment. He'll be back with us as quickly as possible. But yes, indeed, Hendrik, it's Friday nights, and I hope you all got the beers out for some good racing here tonight. We're gonna certainly be enjoying it here as Kenny Hermans is having a bit of a swerve. I'm not sure Olivier Bulting is being too appreciative of what's going on at the moment here, Ed, but it seems like he might be back with us here.
Almost up.
I'm afraid Edward May has turned into a sort of digital zombie here. Hopefully it's going to be better on your end than it is on mine, but I'm not quite sure about that, which is why I'm going to keep talking over. and hopefully connection issues is going to be dealt with in a rather short manner of time, and he'll be right there and back.
Hello, is it all working? I think
yes, it is indeed.
Hello,
it
I
is indeed.
can hear you clearly, Hasse. I'm not sure what's on earth is going on there.
That was strange. Strange indeed, but you are indeed with us again.
I am indeed back. However, I need to take about 5 minutes to get back into the iRacing server because it booted me out when my internet threw a hissy fit, so I need to just be quiet for 5 minutes because I won't be able to see all the action, Hasse, so you will have to step in for a brief bit.
Step in, I shall indeed here as we have Kenny Hermans with the battle for 5th place, still Olivier Bulting on his tail. Bulting, I think, getting held up here is what I would probably make of it. There's a 3-car situation, 3-class situation as well, with the Flemish car there of that's the Flemish BLC2 machine. But you gotta wonder, that's the 999, isn't it? No, it isn't. Man, I am confused. Thomas Leisen it was, of course. Looked like a Porsche for a moment. But it wasn't. That's the ART Porsche, of course. No, that isn't even. I'm way off tonight. Usually I don't get these that wrong, but that's the 32. Anyway, it does look slightly reminiscent. So I think I'm excused. Kenny Hermans still managing to defend here, but it's going to be a long one for 3 hours. Of course, they've managed to do so for half an hour ahead of the Sim District Vibe eSports GT3 green Lamborghini, and I think I might have just jinxed that for Kenny Hermans as Bulting forces his way through, fairly though, but that was a bit of a move, and we shall have another look at it immediately. Let's see what happened here. Olivier Bulting, oh, there's not a lot of space as he dives up the inside. He'd been, I think, realizing over a few laps or 10 now that he must have been quicker than Kenny Hermans to pull off that move at least. That was relatively impressive to keep it clean. Good awareness as well from Kenny Hermans, not to end up in an incident there. Late lunge, but he pulled it off. And he's now up into 5th place in the chase of Håkon Grepstad, the Norwegian driver for Ignium, at the moment about 6.7 seconds up the road. And immediately using the traffic as well to create that little bit of an advantage over the PSR by RPM machine in behind. Down here is Didier de Flaming, who needs to make up quite a bit of lost time here. It's almost cleared all the BLC 3 machines after that early pit stop. Peter Lemkens still in the pits. The ART sim racing machine, I'm afraid, looks sort of out of it, at least for now. They might be back at some point. It might just be in for repairs, but it doesn't look too good. And this is close as well. This is Stefan Verhofstadt on the tail of Stewart, he's ahead now. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my mistake. He's just ahead of Mohamed Soham, and that's, of course, the Decipit Racing Team 209 machine chasing the 20 Traxxas car in a battle for third place here in BLC 3. Of course, leading BLC 3, as you will see on the top of the screen as well, the Simtech E Team, a number 2 car driven by Fabrice Cornelis. In a fairly comfortable position, just clearing the earliest traffic. And behind him is Stuart Reynolds, who, for the Vibe eSports 450 machine there. Sim District car, of course. A bit of an issue there on the team display. We'll have that fixed. Edward Knight has had a problem, and oh, that's a bit of a spinner for the Welshman. In the 27 Ignium Aston Martin. That's in Sector 1, I think. Yeah, as he gets it rolling again. Here's Verhofstadt, still ahead of Soham and the Decipit machine. David Toth leading by 13 seconds in BLC 4 now for a nice competition in the 18 car. So a very, very nice start. A very nice opening 40 minutes. Edward May just having a PC reboot, I think. There's some issues with iRacing, and maybe just an iRacing reboot.
Back into the sim, 90% done. So I'll be here in just a second. But hopefully everyone's been enjoying the Hasse commentary while I've been.
The Hasse monologues,
monologues. Everyone loves a good one of them. I enjoy them as well. I like listening in.
Hendrik's asking when you're going to return, Edward, because people are just about having enough of it, I think.
Oh, no. That's not true. So they just...
No, I don't think
they
so.
can love us both. They're just missing me, and they'd be asking the same if you were missing her, so I am sure. Thank
I'd be hoping
very
so,
much for everyone's concern that we should be going back to regular scheduled programming, as my sim has just said 100% loaded, so any minute now I'll be able to have live pictures, and I'll be able to talk about all of the action, everything I'm seeing out on circuit. Hopefully. Maybe. Come on, iRacing. You can do it.
In BLC4, the closest section at the moment on track between Jelle Verstraeten and Thomas Robin.
Yeah, I'm seeing it now. Hooray!
Oh,
Cars on track. Beautiful. Right. Have a look at this. How long has this battle been going on? Hasse seems to be going on for a decent portion of the race. Close battles as well. Actually, I've just noticed they're emerging in BLC 3 as well. Stefan Verhofstadt in a bit of a scrap with Mohamed. I think that is, at least, or maybe it's with the car ahead of Stuart Reynolds.
Reynolds there, yeah. Is he hiding? Stuart Reynolds, there he is, in the Traxxas machine. Sim District 450 car.
So it's not Stefan Verhofstadt's battling, it's Verhofstadt's battling with the car behind, it appears.
Yeah, that is true. It's indeed Verhofstadt and Soham, yeah. 0.3 of a second separating the two. I'm just gonna see if I can get that team of Stuart Reynolds on point, because I'd like it to be so.
Just going through the curve now, you can just see how much they take through there in the BLC3 cars. They do seem to be a little bit more able to mount some of the curves than maybe some of the other cars. The BLC1 cars, they take a lot of speed through there, and as such, because of how stiff they're set up, they can struggle. BLC2 is a little bit better at taking the curbs, but again, no traction control, no ABS. It does make it a little bit more difficult for them should something go wrong to regain it. So oftentimes they do avoid putting in too much steering lock or avoid taking too much of the curbs. BLC4s, they just monster their way through it. We might see if we can, following through BLC4 car through that chicane and just see how much of the curb they take. Maybe, depending on where David Toth is out on the circuit, we'll be able to have a look just as a comparison from several different cars all through that one point. Currently on board with the 209 There's a bit racing team car, a little bit of a struggle to get on the power. That's the traction control just kicking in. That's always a bit of an annoyance in these GT4 cars. Sometimes it's quicker to run in the traction control as low as you can, but then it doesn't necessarily help out too much through some of the other corners. Maybe also stopping and getting the turn in, it does help just to have a little bit of a bite of traction control, but on the way out it cuts in and is ever so annoying. You just bleed a lot of speed. Speaking of bleeding a lot of speed and bleeding a lot of time, actually, Jimmy and Toons really struggling to keep Oscar Pye at bay here. That gap down to just a quarter of a second, Hasser. Now starting to emerge a little bit more, but race leader under a lot of pressure.
Well. We'll have to see just what happened, because it's gone and flown under the radar that Oscar Pye gone past on both Håkan Grepstad and on Jonathan Poulet. He was done more on Grepstad, and we did see that one happening. So it's not all gone under our noses. Here, this one, however, between the two Valkyrie cars, that looked very, very civilian, and a nice bit of team play between the two to not hold back one another too bad, which is, of course, what you want to see from a couple of teammates there. Of course, you can see battling, but at this stage of the race, it's not going to help any of them to slow one another down. So if the other one's a bit faster, let him go on. Oscar Pye here, as you say, Edward.
Coming through, BLC2 just setting fastest lap of the race, Windsor Ullenberg. Fastest lap as well coming through from Fabrice Cornella, so class leaders setting the pace in pretty much every single division, apart from BLC1. Class leaders here, Jimmy and Tunes really struggling to keep Oscar Pye at bay. You can watch him now trying to make the most of the traffic, but Oscar follows him through in towards turn one. And good view of the rear end of that Lamborghini. It's a very nice shaped car, but I'm sure Oscar would love to see it in his rear view mirrors rather than outside of his windshield.
I think it was certainly not wholly expected, on my part at least, that Oscar Pye would be able to crawl up through the field as quickly as he did, and all of a sudden just be there and with such finesse getting himself through to apply the pressure here for the race lead on the NASCAR of Jimmy and Toons, who's leading.
Seems to be a little bit of a chaos game as we come up to the two battles out on track. The closest cars at the moment are Jimmy Tunes and Oscar Pye, but they are having to pass Stefan and Mohammed all the way up the go out of the Schumacher S's, and Oscar Pye having a little look at the inside. That was more to make sure the move was done safely, though, on the cars behind, rather than any sort of offensive attacking move onto Jimmy and Tunes. So for now, they continue on in that same order, and Tunes from Pye. But it is getting closer and closer every single lap. You have to wonder, when is Oscar going to start to think about going for the move? Because in the next 15 minutes or so, drivers in BLC1 will be making their pit stops, and you always want to make sure you do your pit stops with the track position in your favour. You don't want to be coming in second place into the pits, because quite inevitably and invariably you come out in second place again. You don't find a way to actually make moves. So we'll have a look here. Making a move though, and Tunes again at the inside of both BLC4 class cars, and I think Oscar Pye wants to follow him through, and he does just about do that. Get a nice again cameo from Woolcam as we make our way through turn two. Thankfully no squabbles occurred with those BLC4 cars. Everyone played their part nicely and lived to fight another day. And now they won't have traffic for a little while. They can start to focus on battling one another. And here we go, Oscar Pye closing that gap down under brakes. And he's going to have a nice run here all the way down in towards the hairpin at the very lower tip of this GP circuit. And is the move going to present itself up the inside? He could have gone for it, but instead opting to lift and coast, saving plenty of fuel. And that might be the play from Valkyrie Excite rookies, because saving fuel means you have a shorter pit stop, or can go a little bit of a lap longer and maybe have a shorter final pit stop.
We're not far away from that opening round of pit stops here for the BLC1 machines. Just about 13 minutes we'd expect, there or thereabouts. It's of course an important task for everyone, getting to that hour mark, getting to there where you make sure you don't need that splash and dash at the end. This shouldn't be the heaviest of tracks in terms of fuel usage, so but Oscar Pai is certainly lifting and coasting here extensively to try and save as much fuel as he can, clutching out. Of course, iRacing, the fuel usage is calculated off of the throttle input, and as such, the engine revs doesn't necessarily count. But of course, clutching out will be the most efficient way of doing so without making the engine brake slow down the car while you're trying to save the fuel. Of course, it's sort of different techniques of doing it, because some drivers are bloody fast actually using the engine brake as well. There's a bit of a late apex from Antunes, as Oscar Pai certainly piling on the pressure at the moment, looking for the opportunity to just sneak on through. But
what I have to say though, excellent camera work. I absolutely love that little camera you get on that sort of suspension, because you can see how hard it has to work. You can see as well the way iRacing models it, going through sort of left-hand, as you can see that left-hand wheel isn't under as much load. The suspension sort of raises. You can see that gap between the wheel arch and the tyre face, and then as soon as it goes through a right-hander, the car is under massive load. You can see the car compressing down. That's something you don't often see on other sims, but the way iRacing is able to take all of the data from each individual car and present it to a way that you see with minimal to no latency, that is excellent. That is why I love sort of this sim, for the immersion that we get, and it's why I think this is probably the best sim to take this virtual Belcar Series 2, because you do get some absolutely beautiful shots, like we are seeing this beautiful fight between Antunes and Pai. This is going to be a bit of a tricky one for Oscar Pai. He's going to have to commit to sending the move, and it was a good thing that cars were paying attention there, because that could have quite easily have gone badly.
Very easy, but you need, for a move like that, what you most of all need, I think, Edward, is commitment, because the worst you can do as the driver of a faster car in a situation like that is sort of to send it and then be in second thoughts about it and try to do something else in the middle of it. That's never going to work out well. You need to make a decision, even if it's a sort of marginal decision that you're coming in for, a marginal overtake. You need to commit, and you need to sort of trust the driver of the slower car to accept that someone is sending it, and in this situation you're just going to stay out of the way.
And you also need another word that begins with C, and that is cojones. You need to be very brave when you go into those moves, hard onto the brakes on a lower class car, to make sure that you're able to get those moves done, especially when you've noticed that your rival, the car you're battling, has just made that move. And if it's borderline, you need to have that level of bravery. As oh my word, this is going to be a very worrying moment. And we can see the Sim District GT4 car, the BLC3 class car, getting well out of the way. It's all close together, and this is scary stuff. No matter who you are in this situation, if you're Jimmy and Tunes, you're in the lead of this, and you know that if you make one mistake when passing these slower class cars, Oscar Pai is going to be right there to try and take advantage. And he almost does it there as they come out the Schumacher S's, but it seems to be fine for the moment. So they got through that bit of a bundle of cars nice and safely, which is going to be a relief to the Swiss driver Jimmy and Tunes. The Frenchman was bearing down him just for a moment. His next couple of cars up ahead, you can see, will most likely be caught down the start-finish straight, so shouldn't be that big of a worry. Actually, as I say that, they're going to try it already before they get to start-finish straight, up the inside through the final corner. Play ball for Reece Cornelis, which he does. doesn't throw himself into the mix, which is always good when you are leading a class. You don't want to at all interfere with the lead of another class. You also don't want to risk anything that would also maybe put you out of contention for your own class lead. So very good awareness from Fabrice Cornelis. Actually looking at his gap to second place in BLC 3. Stuart Reynolds is 4.5 seconds behind. So not that big of a gap, but quite considerable over a course of just a stint.
Yeah, and I think Cornelis here in the traffic, he's going to be taking the liberties he can just to stay safe, basically, because he wants to just make sure that he's not going to encounter any trouble along the way, which is a wise way to do it, I think. Here's Lawrence Klotz, who's getting caught up to here by Didier de Flaming, but that is, of course, an inter-class battle with the BLC 1 car trying to make its way through on the BLC 2s now. As Didier de Flaming's got a long way to make it up back to the front of the race. Now, Jimmy and Toon still under pressure from Oscar Pius. We're back with the lead battle in BLC 1 and by far the two closest cars on track. Of course, not the only classes that we're having in action. So, trying to spread the love around the best as we can here. But Oscar Pius certainly deserves a major part of the attention just from the way he's taking the race to a team that's been on top for so much of this season. The Anage competition car there with Jimmy and Toons, of course, an absolute star in this series. Oscar Pai, though, showing that he is no slouch at all. He's very much there, and he's really doing his best to pile on the pressure, as I said before, just before the pit stops here. Let's see what that's going to make of a difference here, and do you think, Britt, that Oscar Pai and Valkyrie is going to be able to take advantage of the round of pit stops that's coming up here?
We'll see. It all depends on what their second drivers are like across both cars, because these two, we've seen that Oscar Pai is maybe marginally the faster car, but it's not going for that overtake to try and make advantage of that. So we'll see what happens when they put their second driver in. Maybe Arnage's second driver is quicker than Valkyrie's second driver, and we'll see that gap start to emerge, or maybe it will continue on. Maybe we'll see yet again Valkyrie quicker than Arnage, and if that's the case, then that's going to be very worrying for current race leaders if they're able to hold on to that position.
A good point indeed, Edward, that it could be a worrying tendency here for Entombs, but we'll have to see just how it plays out here. The next 7-8 minutes here, I think, is going to be vital. The next 5 minutes, to be honest. And just, well, these cars going to make it to the hour or not? As I said earlier, I wouldn't think it's that much of a problem here at the Nürburgring, but you never know. At least not until we see it. Still, it's Renzo Erlenbrook, though, in BLC 2, leading by a relatively massive 17 seconds. Hansi Pullmans is third. He's chasing the man in second, which is, of course, Benjamin De Pabe for BE Sim Racing. Sean van Limt and Philip Vliegen follows there on. And then it's Lawrence Klotz. In BLC 3, it's Fabrice Cornelissen, SimTech team leading from Stuart Reynolds for Sim District Vibe. AMR GT4, and then in third it's the Decipit Racing Machine of Mohamed Soham. What actually happened to ART? A very good point. They had some kind of issue. I'm gonna see if I can look it up. Philip Faber had this issue at some point in the race. Here he's all on his own, coming into turn 1. Too hard on the throttle, spins it. And then makes it on, but he's in another issue just 5 minutes further down the road. As he goes onto the gravel, that looked rather bizarre. And then at some point he jumped to the pits. He's spin into the pits, he's jumped to the pits. Edward, I think that doesn't smell of anything happening in the sim as such. As we have a very close battle for P1 that's cooking up, but it might just have been a problem on the technical side there for Philip Faber in the ART car, which he's trying to get sorted with the run into the pits, with the jump to the pits as well. without having had any real actual damage. Chicane, though, within 2 cents of a second here on the tail of the number 1 on Irish competition car, driven by Jimmy and Toons. And
here we go. This is definitely, I think, game on now. For me, it looks like Oscar Pie is a little bit more racy. I'm not sure from your view, Hassan, but I think for me, Oscar Pie is probably thinking less about hanging about as we do approach, I've been saying, the pit stop window from anywhere from about now onwards, so when we expect drivers in BLC 1 to make their first round of pit stops. Ideally, they want to make maybe a couple of laps more to obviously reach the 1 hour mark and ensure that they will be able to make the race on just 2 pit stops. Usually they do one for tyres or maybe both taking tyres, but usually they only take one of those stops as a tyre change, both stops of course to take on fuel. We are actually noticing that the track temp is considerably lower than what we've seen at previous rounds. It's only 20 degrees and it's going to continue to get cooler, probably to the sim minimum of 18 degrees as we are getting in towards the nice orange hues of sunset.
yeah, indeed. And the nice hues of sunset. Well, a nice cue, Edward, to have a look at the weather. The sim time is indeed 10 minutes past 4 on the day that it is today, October 14th, which means we're not really going to be going into the true darkness, just the ever-fading twilight of the southern German fields. 20 degrees track temp, 18 degrees of air temperature, so a cool
so
track.
We're finishing at about 6 o'clock, so I think actually it might get dark for the finish, I think, Hassa. So we might have a nice floodlit finish for whoever comes through to win the race, and at this point it could be either one of those 2 cars that we were following, Tunes or Oscar Pie. What's happening with Philip Verbay?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out what actually happened to make him go off the track here. We're just gonna go, see if we can. It does look a bit weird. He went into the pits for no real apparent reason. I still have to figure out what happened to Philip Verbay there, because I really have no clue. It's a bit of a mystery. An issue has happened though to Thomas Robin. That's down in BLC 4. He's had a major problem. And it was just ahead of Jelle Verstraeten. Here comes the vibe.
That was
nudgy.
Yeah, for me, Thomas Robin comes as the BLC 1 car comes alongside of Olivier Bultink. For me, it looks like the TCR car just moves a little bit left, and that sort of spooks him a bit. So I think that's probably a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Just a little bit more awareness probably needed by the BLC 4 class car there.
Yeah, I would also, Dries, that's exactly my thoughts to it. I think he did indeed have some tech issues. It's the only real probable explanations for the issues befalling the 55 ART Sim Racing BLC 2 machine. It could be all sorts of things.
Jaron Vatman coming in BLC 1. This is the first scheduled pit stop of the race. We've had a few drivers coming in for damage or for penalty reasons, this, that, and the other. But this is the first scheduled pit stop, and it is Steven Bielschneider in behind the wheel of the 88 BLC 1 Lamborghini. I think we might see both Jimmy and Tunes and Oscar Pie come in on this lap as we are 1 hour and 1 minute into the race, and in comes Antunes, and now this is going to be a in-lap for all in-laps coming through for Oscar Pie, who's actually going to get a little bit of traffic on this lap. Look at all the cars up ahead. This is probably exactly the reason why Jimmy Antunes decided to come into the pits when he did, because he knows he's going to have clear track and can see that he won't be held up too badly. Oscar Pie, this is a real nightmare. He's having to go all the way around the outside through turn 1. That's the inside into towards turn No, he doesn't get the inside. I thought he was going to get the inside there on the Porsche. That's Peter Lemkins having to get out of the way, but that sacrificed a lot of time for Oscar Pai, and he will struggle to get this in-lap done quickly as he wants to. And we've just seen Carlos Duigues coming into the number 1 car. So our competition will be led by Carlos Duigues and Fabio Boisch coming into the other Valkyrie car, the what's termed as the sort of pro outfit, as we are following the rookies that are currently leading this race. Scott McFall coming in for the 5 BMS eSports green car. So driver changes coming through. Of course, they do make 2 driver changes in the race. So basically the drivers that start the race give over to another driver, and then they get back in the car to finish the race.
And of course, they will need to switch twice as well throughout the race.
Lucas Romano has gotten ahead of Carlos Duigues. So Carlos had a much longer pit stop, actually. So that tells us that tyres were taken by our large competition, but not by Lucas Romano. That's a big development here. PSR by RPM find themselves up in second place. Well, on merit, but that could quickly change as I think the overtaker swiftly completes it. Ooh, touchy there on the exit, but they got through it nice and safely. Excellent stuff. Cold tyres for Duigues, but still this was it up the inside. And maybe that works in this time in the favour of Oscar Pai, who's had these two scrapping it out, sacrificing a lot of time. Is Carlos Duigues. We get a shot of Julian Toons, who's obviously just handed over to his teammate. But now, where is Oscar Pai? When is he going to come into the pits? He's carried on going. Oh my word, how has he been able to save the fuel?
We've heard him lifting and coasting pretty extensively over this opening stint, so he's really trying to extend. Strategically, this could be smart, especially when we come to the last stop. If they find themselves in a good position still on track, that bit of time saved on that final pit stop could really make a difference. We'll see if they are aiming for that double stint as well, Edward, because with the low track temps here, if you're going for it and if you're trying really hard to save the tires from the beginning of the stint, it might just be possible here.
Yeah, you have 2 sort of options. You can either take tyres on your first stint and then double those till the end as the track gets cooler and there's more rubber laid down so you don't wear them as much. I think that's probably the smartest thing to do. So we'll probably have Oscar Pai up to come in and take a tyre change, but then those tyres that come on will be the set to finish the race, you would imagine. Of course, it will be very difficult to finish the race on just one set of tyres. If you can manage it, you can save a lot of time, but I don't think it's something that a lot of teams and drivers will opt for. I think Iris has put steps in to try and stop triple stinting of the tyres. There's Oscar Pai there coming into the pits. Now that might look like an unsafe pit entry. You didn't come through at the dashed sort of white lines before you get to the red and white section, but in iRacing that is counted as a safe pit entry, so it shouldn't be too bad for Oscar Pai. You can see just getting hard onto the brakes as he goes in towards the pits. Judged to perfection. That is excellent.
And hopefully it's not gonna cost him anything in terms of a penalty. Gaëtan Angers.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I think it's Gaëtan Angers. I think he's he might just be a happy man if he comes out in the lead, Edward.
We'll see. He's certainly got a smile on his face because he's come in from the lead of the race and will be taking over a car that will hopefully be still leading. It all depends on where Carlos is on the circuit, and we can have a look at the number 1 car just to find out exactly where our Naj competition are now. If we can, I think they're coming up through the final chicane. Here we go, coming up towards it now. Just having to get around. I think that's Philip Vliegen. He's just passed. Gaëtan needs to get moving pretty quickly if he wants to come out ahead of Duigues in towards the chicane. But I think the car is up on the jacks. That is taking tyres. Now it's on pit exit. This could be touch and go into turn 1 here, Hassan. I think Angers.
I think they're going to make it.
Got it actually done. Yes, he does.
Well
Brilliant.
And well and truly by about 4 seconds or so there. That's a pretty massive advantage. Really pulling it out over those few laps, doing the Schumacher, so to say. Here's Fabio Besuch, who just squeezes through a Lucas Romano. And the Belcar competition, the 7 machine, the Pro machine, I think indeed, has squeezed up in to 3rd place there. Fabio Besuch, beautiful move, just about making it stick. Edward, talk us through what happened.
Yeah, this is it, just on the inside. Lucas Romano, we know, is on old tyres. Did not take them at that last pit stop, and it was just a struggle to get it turning. You can see the understeer from the Audi. Fabio with much better tyres, and now you can see Besuch up into 3rd place, trying to reel in now Carlos Diguez, and the gap of around about, believe that to be 5 seconds. Could still easily be done, as that's the gap. Or it's about 4 seconds from Ogier to Diguez, and then about 5 seconds from Diguez down to Besuch. So fairly evenly spread up at the front, but it all depends on this stint, what the lap times are like, how they navigate the traffic, before we see any or can make any real judgments of how the next phase of the race is going to go.
Yes, indeed, and that's a touch there on Kim van Hooydonk in the 450 machine, and the Belgians pushed way on into the gravel trap. The gravel being very slippery in iRacing, most will know. And he makes contact with the soft barrier that probably isn't that soft altogether, because he's managed to pick up some damage to his right-hand side there. And Fabio Besuch and Lucas Romano, I don't know what happened to him here. He's well clear of Romano here. He's just tires. Just gone around.
Easily done, of course. Cold tyres, just getting to grips with the car as well. It's, if you do see a mistake from a driver, it will be at the start of a stint as they try and bed in. But for me, that moment we just saw, that was on the Lamborghini. I don't think there was anything that could have really been done to try and get out of the way by Kuhn, and that is a sad incident. But I think the stewards will most likely look at that and take action. I'm going to see if we can get another replay just to see if that confirms it or not, because I only saw a sort of a glimpse of it. But for me, I think it is the Lamborghini that moves right and sort of basically hits that Aston that is pretty much doing exactly what it needs to do, just stay as far to the right as he can do.
Yeah, gonna go on board with Kim van Hooydonk. That's a good old squeeze. Actually,
nothing that Quinn could do there.
No.
Oof.
You wonder, Edward, maybe more steering and then a sort of, you know what you do with a rally car on gravel in sort of a situation like that where it understeers and you just like blip on the throttle, but quickly indeed, and come off and on and off and on, and then sort of get the car to rotate, but not too much, and then sort of get it pointed in a straight line like that.
Queen's just come into the pits as well. This allowed Edward Knight to pass him by, but Edward also needs to pit. Hendrik de Grave has just came into the pits as well. Koen Klopman has already made his pit stop. He did that a little while earlier, though, on lap 30. So difference in strategy coming through from all of these drivers as it stands. But yeah, for me, I think that is a big moment for Koen van Hooydonk, who gets it back up and running now. Thijs Maas, you can see a bit of a squabble now with Rob Janssens. I think they're used to the two JWS cars scrapping out.
So it seems Matthias Maas on the tail of Robert Janssens. He'll be hoping to climb up through the order as well, as we have seen all of the BLC 3s in the pits as well. Most of the BLC 4s, except for Thomas Robin, who's going long. So we're now 11 minutes into the race here. Lucas Romano still got the company of Fabio Besuch. After Fabio had a bit of a spin there, now he's got all the work to do again here. But he's gaining on Lucas Romano, who indeed didn't take tires on their first pit stop here. So on the other hand, the more time Lucas Romano can spend ahead, the better it'll be. But he's what drive, yes. And you can really see what type of a difference it makes there with the fresh tires in them.
Oh, that was a bit of a squeeze there. That was a little bit naughty, I think, from Romano. He couldn't move over like that. That is almost a disaster waiting to happen. Thankfully, they get through it nice and safety. But look at this. You just see as they go through wide, there's a bit of a squeeze, and that's always a worry. They get through it unscathed, but that is nail-biting stuff. Lesuch finds himself up into third place. We can see it here. Look how close it was as well. Just catch the tail end. We catch yourself after the squeeze has happened. But Lesuch, credit to him, stays committed through it. And now can look to break away and catch back up to the leading pair. That again is staying as it was. Gaetan Anger from Diguez. I mean, I have to say, this has been a brilliant performance from Valkyrie eSports rookies, and I'm amazed that they're rookies, because I'd love to be a rookie and be considered a rookie when I've got 7,733 I rating.
That's a very good point. It's a slight joke being played on the rest of us. Of course, Dries, I'm not saying that either Edward or I would have had any chance of saving that. It was merely a suggestion. We've got some pit stops coming in here from Christoph Raas in the Flemish 999 machine and Ronnie Heyman taking over for Duct Tape Racing in the 992 BLC2 car. Gaetan Anger still at the head of the field by about 4 seconds. So a relatively comfortable advantage, you could say, Edward, given the sort of margins.
This lap. Definitely got held up this lap, because you can just see Carlos Diguez is going to come up to the Ignium Aston Martin. Car is currently in third place in BLC 3. He's going to get it in a much nicer place, one that doesn't lose him any time to go through up the inside down this sort of back bend. Not really a straight, is it? It's sort of a straight, then a bend, then another straight in towards the chicane. But yeah, Gaetan Anger got held up that last lap, because you're going to see when he comes across the line, he's lost best part of probably 8 tenths. See, as he comes across the line, what lap did Anger manage? A 57.18. It's a 56.19 from Carlos Diguez, so it's not just 8 tenths, it was a full second that Anger lost. Big time differential, but that's just down to traffic. I don't think that's indicative of any real crisis going on at Valkyrie. I think we're going to see the ebb and flow throughout the race, but Gaetan can't afford any more moments like that, we're just struggling with traffic. Hold your breath moment.
Oh,
look at this up the inside. I mean, Lucas Romano has got his car in the perfect place to get through the traffic nice and cleanly. Scott McFall just kind of has to react to all of the cars around him afterwards. But that's the benefit of being car in front. You get to dictate almost how the other cars sort of move for you. You can position yourself to the inside to make sure they go, while you can position yourself around maybe the outside to make sure they go tight into the corner. And you can do all of that while being aware that that's going to have a knock-on effect of the cars in behind. But Scott McFall, look at the difference in tyre life. The drive out of that right-hander and in towards the hairpin. The braking performance is going to be there as well for the Lamborghini, and in towards, on the way out of the hairpin, Scott McFall is ahead and is able to take 4th place. Now through the S's, it's going to be a worry here as we just got away. We'll see it up the hill, but that's going to be worrying for Scott McFall as he's having to negotiate this Audi, the TCR class Audi, not the GT3 Audi in behind. He manages to do it safely, but that is a very worrying sight when you just make a move and then you suddenly catch a slow class car, TCR, up through probably one of the most committed areas of the circuit and have a car breathing down your neck. Bouncing over the chicane, look at that, excellent stuff. You get to see just the cars, how committed all of them are. Lucas Romano, though, is going to start to struggle and drop back just a little more. I think that opting not to take tyres at this stage of the race has really hurt him. Maybe at the end of the race it might work out for him, we shall see. It did get him, obviously, the track position. Maybe later on in the race, that is going to be key. But I think at the first round of pit stops, to not take tyres is sadly a gamble that hasn't quite paid off for them.
It seems like it could have been better, but on the other hand, all of those laps they've spent in front, and especially the laps they've spent fighting with the cars on the fresher tires and sort of slowing them down, will have played into their advantage for later in the race. Although they will have that longer pit stop for taking tires at the second stint, while we expect most of the other teams at least to try to go for the double stint on the tires on the later of the two stints. I think expecting the track to be at its quickest, the grippiest, and the coolest, where it's of course easier as well to sort of save the tires. Still 3.5 seconds for Gaetan Anger between himself and Carlos Dieguez, who was right there. It is coming down, although slowly, to say the very least, between first and second. And BLC1 saying that the Anash car of Carlos Dieguez just clawed in about 0.4 of a second. But we'll see just about how that plays out in the long run. Nick Stope is ahead of Steven Slider. This is the two SimWorld.be cars, the Rapid and the Fast. And it's Rapid ahead of Fast at the moment. We'll see if Fast is faster than Rapid at the end of things. So far, it looks like Steven Snyder is at least closing the gap here to Nick Stope on the second stint. It's the 114 ahead of the 88, and the battle for 7th place at the moment.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of things that seem to be staying a certain way for the moment. Gaetan Anger losing a little bit more time to Carlos Dieguez in behind. Again, that gap's now just dipped underneath the 3-second barrier for the first time since they both got into the car. But interestingly, the one benefit that Anger has, and of course Valkyrie rookies have, is the fact they went 2 laps longer. That's a whole lot of time you can save in the pits. That can be something like 2.5 seconds, maybe even 3 seconds saved in the pits. That has a big knock-on effect, and could easily see, even if Gaetan Anger loses out in this battle in the race to Carlos in behind, as long as he's there or thereabouts, they make their final pit stops, he's going to give his teammate the perfect place to come home and bring it across the line in first.
You really have to think it's a brilliant opportunity for Gaetan Anger. Although Carlos Dieguez
away as Hendrik de Grave has just gotten through on Jens Goossens, so I think we just missed it at the right moment. Here we go. Oh. Jens Goossens did get ahead. We just cut away from it at the worst possible time. Still going for it though, down into the left-hander. Look at how late they both get onto the brakes. Is there going to be contact? They leave barely a hair's width as they slide their way through and onto the exit. Be careful not to run each other out of road. Keep it nice and sensible down in towards the hairpin. I thought Jens Goossens had that move down, but what a beautiful fight back that was from Hendrik de Grave, but it didn't quite pan out in the end.
No, just about got it settled there, but it went all the way from turn 1 all the way through the stadium section and a bit more. So De Grave gets the cutback, goes for the outside, a bit of a slide there via Hoosens, and Hoosens get slowed down by that. Another cutback to the inside here from De Grave, and that probably brings him in momentarily at least ahead. This is where we cut off before. Hoosens then gets a good drive. You see him just try and sneak around the outside. And there's a 30-second stop-and-go penalty for the 114 car for avoidable contact with the 450. The 114, that is, of course, the SimWorld.be machine, if I'm not completely mistaken.
Yeah, that was the instant we saw into that corner. We were just watching these two battle through nice and cleanly. That was the moment when we saw, I think, the SimWorld car move across the right into the other Sim District BLC3 car. That was Queen van Hooijdonk behind the wheel at that moment in time. And then, obviously, stewards deemed that to be avoidable contact that was caused by the 114, which I think was the consensus in the commentary booth at the time as well. So stewards having to keep on top of things, but thankfully we haven't had to call on them too much in the first hour. That's the first time that stewards have been involved in giving out penalties so far. So that tells us all we need to know, that it's been relatively clean out there. And, you know, don't want to curse the commentator, touch wood, it continues on.
Yeah, so far so good. We're almost halfway through the race, and it does indeed look like it's settled, at least ever so slightly. Although the gap between Gaetan Angers and Carlos Dieguez is coming down. It's now underneath 2 seconds for the first time this stint. And Dieguez doing a good job of making sure that Gaetan Angers is not doing a Remco Evenepoel with it all and just running away from a long way south to claim the title. Congratulations to all of you Belgians, indeed, on the world title on the road cycling scene. But that aside, keeping it very interesting and keeping one another honest here at the top of the field. The second Valkyrie car, just about 12 seconds down. That's Fabio Bessour. He had that spin, Edward, and you wonder if he hadn't had that spin, just how close he would actually have been to the leading battle here.
That's interesting, yeah. It's all about what could have been, though, I think, for the moment. Although, he's going to have to now relay the information to his teammate that he is quick. And if Gaetan Angers can maybe hold up Carlos Dieguez a little bit, as we can see, that gap is coming down. We might see them start to battle, and if they do start battling, well, Fabio, he'll find himself up in there sooner rather than later, and that could be a brilliant battle, seeing those two Valkyrie competition cars having to duke it out with, of course, the car that has been leading and almost running away with the championship up until this point on our competition. It's a very tasty fight. I'm sure we can look forward to that in the coming moments. A little bit of traffic, though, slowing down Fabio now, which is probably the reason why we saw him gain so much earlier on, is that he maybe had a clear lap with everyone else had traffic, and now he's had to fight his way back through. Up ahead, Angers matching Carlos Dieguez's time as they were chasing each other down. Carlos with a 56.00. Gaetan Angers marginally slower the 56.04, but not a lot in it. Oh my word, there was it was like they were racing for position out there. Fabio just fighting it out with, I believe that to be one of the, so evidently one of the BLC2 class cars, but I can't see which one it was.
Just sneaking through on the lap traffic there, Fabio Bessour. You're following. He's well-known and a very strong driver in his own right. So interesting to see what he'll be able to do here in the course of his stint, and just what that gap is going to be when he gives the car over to his teammate again. Of course, Jonathan Poulet, the second driver in that. Stella having a bit of a sleep. We haven't had any unannounced ringings of the doorbell. Maybe just some people in the hallway that, of course, would awaken the dog, as it ever so often has done in the past. So far, we've been it's been silent on that end, and to be honest, it just quite isn't the same, isn't without a bit of barkiness coming through at some point, a bit of action coming through here ahead of Dieguez. Ahead of Fabio Bessour. Yeah, of course. This is the 27 Ignium Aston, getting overtaken by one of the BLT2 Porsches. The 32 car of Christoph Hermans, that's the duct tape racing machine. Now also it's going to get sent on. Yep.
Chuck it in. Use that downforce to good advantage. The extra grippy tyres as well, helping out more mechanical grip being afforded to him being in a GT3 car instead of being with a Porsche Cup car. Porsche Cup car knows it's got more straight line speed but doesn't want to be too close. Actually opts to stay out of the slipstream in towards turn one. Here's an incident with Thomas Robert, and I think this is Queen van Hooijdonk in behind. In towards turn one. That looked like just a miscommunication. I'm not sure what was going on there, but Thomas Robert turns in, and Queen, I think, is committing for a move up the inside, but he's from quite far back. We'll have another look.
Oh, this is the wrong car. My apologies. This is the right car, Bonk.
I think it is just too late from Queen.
Yeah.
It's from quite far back.
The stewards are probably going to have a look at that one because rather unnecessary would be my immediate verdict of that situation.
It does look, for a moment, to give Queen credit, if we look from the on board, it does look that Thomas Robin is affording space up the inside into the corner. It looks like he's actually getting out of the way more than actually doing anything, and I think it's a case of Queen thinking, oh, he's letting me through, I'll go for it, and then all of a sudden it closes down up again, so we might see. I think, though, for all the world, that could be Quinn getting himself slapped with a stop-go penalty. We will, of course, see what the stewards make of it. They probably get better angles that they can all look at than we can on a broadcast, because we have to focus on other action. We can't focus on every instant. We have to focus on this excellent battle. Lucas Romano, we know he's on rotten tyres. They've been going through the ringer here, going through 1.5 hours of punishment, and he'll have to punish them a little bit more if he needs to keep Eric in behind. Hausler, Dutchman, closing that gap down, Kriknian. It seems to be in a straight line. The acceleration and just the ability to put the power down much stronger up the inside in towards the chicane. Lucas Romano doesn't fight it. You can see it snapping as well. He's getting oversteer and understeer. Those tyres are really not having a lot of fun. I mean, he's still going to go for it, Lucas Romano. I said he was going to give it up and give the position away. Turns out he still wants to fight a little bit, but evidently I don't think he's got the tyres to really keep this fight going.
Yeah, Hausler gets that 5th place sorted there. Scott McFall's got a bit of duct tape traffic to get around. That's the 992 machine. And you can see just how easily you get held up. Even that's going to cost you a few tenths as a BLC 1 machine, and not easy to get on through, of course, in the braking zones, in the corners, and on, of course, mostly on corner entry. It's where you really seem to be able to make the difference as with the extra grip, as you mentioned just a minute ago, Edward. Scott McFall 4th now, Eric Hausler in 5th, then Lucas Romano in 6th place, of course. And you can see the teams, that's Sim District, Vibe, eSports, GT3 Green ahead of Ignium and PSR 4th, 5th, and 6th. Of course, still leading is the Valkyrie, and I say that in very much quotation marks, rookies car. It's an Enchère and an I rating of 7.7 thousand. Doesn't go into my categorization of a rookie, but again, Edward, that most of all seems to be an evil joke played on everybody else.
Yeah.
Ronald van Utrecht, there's been a bit of an issue here. We'll see just what happened to him here for RP Motorsport GT4 by Cruz. He cuts it on the inside. I think he's got some damage to the machine there that's making it quite tricky to drive. That would be my immediate thought when seeing it, at least. The Porsche GT4 machine, Edward, it's sort of been put in a tough spot for quite some time. We all know the strength of the machine, especially on the twistier circuits, but it just seems to lack that bit of grunt, really, to just have that competitive edge, or even just to stay in relative competition with the other GT4 machines.
Yeah, I think for me the Porsche is so good at getting it stopped. The Porsche GT4, it's brilliant at getting it onto the brakes and just slamming the ankles on. It's a car that you can really dive everyone else, because you just know that you can brake so much later and harder than everyone else and still make it to the apex in time and get away with it. And as well, it does help with a bit of weight transfer, with the engine being in a more of a different place, less conventional maybe than with some of the other cars in its class, having the engine more in the front and then the power driven to the back wheels. And the engine, but further rearwards, does get that extra little bit of kick through the corners and getting it to sort of swing through. But then that has the flip side of a little bit of instability through some more medium speed and higher speed corners with the weight planted more towards the rear. It can cause some struggles, but for the most part, it's a nicely balanced car. And I have to say, I think it's definitely struggles with the top end speed more than anything else. Every single car in that class is quicker than it. The Aston Martin It's quicker at top end. BMW's definitely quicker in top end, and Pocket Rocket is got to be a McLaren. No one's driving it. I don't think it's a car that's available to the drivers to have, being as it's not as favoured, but that is a real dark horse car, and I think we might see if we get another season of this. Hopefully iRacing lets us have more cars out on track of different variant makes, because I'd love to see a McLaren out there. It's a brilliant car and quite overlooked in GT4s, I've got to say.
Yeah, absolutely so, and also a relatively recent addition, not one we've seen go on too well in the sim so far, but a nice machine indeed, and one you'd love to see a bit more of. Angers, Diegues, Edward, it's down to 0.7 of a second between the two, and things like turning a bit spicy here as we've just passed the halfway marker of the race here.
Yeah, we have, and I think as we do get towards that halfway point of the race house, isn't it not time for us to have a short intermission, get refueled, and set up nicely for the final half of the race?
Yes, indeed it is. We're going to have a 5 to 7, maybe 8 minutes break just to get fueled up and refreshed, and we'll leave you on board with Carlos Diegues. You can enjoy the pictures of the lead battle here in BLC 1. Maybe a few minutes, and Edward and I shall return shortly indeed. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gents, we are back for the final hour and 20 minutes here from the Nürburgring and round 5 of the virtual Belcar series here from 2022. After this, only a single round will remain, but that is indeed the fabled 24 hours of Solder, which does indeed offer a load of points for the different teams, and as such, nothing will be settled even after tonight here, as Carlos Diego is still on the chase for that Belcar car, leading the way here of Gaetan Angers. It's a slightly bigger margin than when we left them last time around. It was 0.7 of a second. It's up to 1.27 seconds here now, and it's as we said, just about 20 minutes away from the final pit stop at the moment. So an interesting situation, a very close battle for the lead in BLC1. In BLC2, it's now Maxim van den Hove in the number 12 GCE Racing by Renan car that's been very, very good so far this season, and it doesn't look to be getting any worse for him, to be honest. A solid 26-second advantage over B-Sim Racing, and the car driven by Loic Lamont, the 192 machine. They're in a relatively close fight, though, with Flemish SimSports. They're just 4.3 seconds behind. All the while, it's not a real on-track battle for position at the moment. It could very, very quickly and easily heat up into something that is very much that. Gregory Bruyard has had a bit of an issue here in his Audi for AC Motorsports eSport M, or was that just the touch we saw earlier when it was another driver in the car? That seems strangely reminiscent. I suppose it's the latter. Back with Loic Lamont. As we said, it's GT Racing, and the brilliant Maxim van den Hove in the lead of BLC2. Christoph Raas is just there, though. It's going to be an interesting one. See if they will get any closer as the end of the race beckons. And so Kevin van der Wielen and Hendrik de Grave. Oh, I'm sorry, de Grave quite a bit away back. It's Matthias Maas and van der Wielen. And it's the Decipit car who's fallen behind of both of the Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars machines. And that means that's going to be sort of interesting coming towards the end of the race with Mohamed Horam coming back into the Decipit Racing Team car, 2 of 9 here. They had good pace on the first stint, and you would expect them to sort of get back on that kind of... Yeah, you'd expect them to get kind of back on that sort of pace for the final bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say, though, that Kevin seems to just... I don't know if it's just the pace or something, but he's fallen into a Dessa pit of despair, it seems. Not at all what he was... hoping for.
I'm holding my hands in my head at work.
Have a little bit of light humour there, just to hopefully have a bit more of a feel-good vibe about this, because it's not been at all, I think, what Kevin was hoping for. You can just see, though, just as we watched through all of that, a bit of a moment there. I think that was Eric Hausler. I think that was the Ignium car, currently in 5th place, just having to carve his way up through. It's always difficult when you are in the top class cars to try and negotiate what is, of course, slower traffic. Speaking of fast class cars, at the top of the fastest class, BLC1, that battle has continued to rage on. Did come just underneath half a second between Angers and Digues. Closing up, but then still got this fight to watch as well. So we're going to have to try and keep our eyes on both of these battles, Asta, because that one at the top of BLC1 is looking very tasty.
Absolutely. So it's down to half a second here between the Valkyrie Rookies car and the number 1 Anage competition machine here, driven by Carlos Diegues, who is very much driving on at the late part of the stint now. They've got a clear track ahead of them, at least for the time being. And let's go on board with Diegues. We've been so before. We'll do so again. Just to see, point out sort of where the difference is made, but he's really within the slipstream. He's braking late. He's getting close on corner exit, though. A little bit of a bite of the sausage curb on there on the exit of the chicane. Very tidy through the final corner. Great exit there for both of them. A little bit losing a bit of apex there for Valkyrie, but getting a very fine run though with a late apex in the end. That is going to be a far-flung move if that was ever to work. And so it didn't for Carlos Dieguez, and more case, I think, Edward, of just making your presence known there in the mirrors.
That's what it's all about. It's just about filling the mirrors and hoping they make a mistake. It's at this stage of the race, you're going close to the phase of pit stops. It's a time when you, of course, want to get out of position, but it's not worth going for those sort of dives. It's all about just trying to fill and try and make sure that the car ahead makes a mistake, and then if no mistakes are looking to come through, then you can reel yourself in, get a little bit closer, and then try and make the move yourself. But then, of course, Carlos might be quite happy sitting in behind, just as we saw earlier on in the race with, I believe it was Thomas Robert in behind the wheel of the Valkyrie rookie car, just, you know, sliding in and saving a bit of fuel, getting himself out into the lead of the race after the pit stops. Might be quite beneficial coming into the race to save that fuel.
Yeah, indeed, and we saw it before as well with the prolonged stint there from the Valkyrie car there on the opening stint, that they were able to claw out 3-4 seconds alone on that. It might be a case of that.
Oh,
now here into the chicane, he's gone for it into the chicane, and he's done it very swiftly there. Carlos Dieguez into the lead of the race, and Gaetan O'Shea not really looking like he was going to battle that too hard at any point, but he's just sort of let it happen. Here he comes again.
That was just a committed move up the inside, and I think it caught O'Shea by surprise. Didn't seem to have any real answer, but now yet again they're going to be able to see that Valkyrie car slot in behind, save fuel, and I'm not sure. It seems that unless Carlos Dieguez can pull a gap and manage to get himself well out of the way, he's going to almost have shot himself in the foot, because car behind can save plenty of fuel in the last sort of 10-15 minutes of this stint, maybe get an extra lap in there, and then for the final stop have a much shorter pit stop and come out in front yet again, maybe with a bigger advantage.
At least that's probably going to be what they're hoping, at least, and it did work on the opening stint. A real reason to think it wouldn't work on the second one. There's the 81 on the exit. No one's holding back here. It's the battle for the lead, and you'll know that as well. If you don't have the relative up, you'll have your crew chief or your teammate or whoever's on telling you, hey, it's the leading cars coming up, and it's a situation where you know that there's so much on the line there. A little extra caution is probably needed. Anyway, it's a nice competition now, leading ahead of Valkyrie X-Type rookies, and then the Valkyrie competition car now just 11.5 seconds down on the race lead. They have been gaining slowly but surely. Question is if it's ever going to be enough for them. In BLC2, Edward, it's GT Racing Thailand with a 30-second lead now on the Flemish car ahead of B-Sim Racing. Something happened there. We're going to see just about what it was. Here it is. That's Christoph Raas with a move in the 999 into turn 1. And turn 2, side by side as well. Gentlemanly driving there. Plenty of space between the two. Raas still just ahead. Through 3 and 4. The dance of the stadium section, as we've seen it before, so we see it again. And it is really all about getting the drive from that final corner out of the stadium section. However you can line that up, Edward, it's probably going to work. You called it, and it's happening. It's a Valkyrie car on the tail of Anaj, saving the fuel probably, and let's see how much longer they'll go in about 12-14 minutes time.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Even if Gaetan Angers has not been able to save that amount of fuel, he's still got to have enough in reserve. Because he came in on lap 34, he'll still most likely be able to go 2 laps longer anyway, maybe even 3 laps longer if he's been able to extend and build that margin of fuel. And then he's taking on so much less fuel. He's going to be able to have a nice light car and also a nice quick pit stop to round out this. But one thing that's going to be interesting is what is he going to do with the tyres? What are both drivers going to do when it comes down to the question of tyres? Do they make the change onto fresh rubber for the end, or do they gamble and say, we're going to have that time in reserve, we're going to not take tyres, have the extra 25-30 seconds that gives us, and then hope that's enough to stem the tide of a charging quicker car on quicker tyres? It will be tricky, but it's a question that I think we're going to see one driver, maybe both drivers, opt to do something else. It might be a case of coming a lap before, or with the offset, they'll know what they can do. If basically... Actually, I think I've just had a thought. No matter what they do, they're in the perfect position right now, Valkyrie, because they can see what Arnage do with their tyres and react accordingly. If Carlos Rodriguez takes tyres, they could easily take tyres themselves and then have the exact same deficit of tyre life, but because of the differential of fuel, they might be able to come out ahead, take a shorter pit stop. If they see that Dieguez doesn't take tyres, they could also not take tyres. They could also have that short pit stop and still come out ahead, and then they'll have the same tyres. So no matter what happens, they could just copy what the other car does and not, risk losing out.
It's a good point. They are in a good position, to say the very least. Here's Bram Bellemans, who just slices a bit too much of that curb at an angle and finds himself facing in the wrong way. Spins it around nicely whenever the space is available to no harm, and he's running without any major issue there, and that's about the best you could hope from such a situation. Gaetan Angers did a brilliant job of just staying in the slipstream, forceful enough, to say the least, Edward, that it's very much possible. Oh, that's Carlos Dieguez getting a very slow run through the chicane there, massively missing the first apex. Angers, I think, caught out a little bit by it, expecting him probably to go quicker. That almost ended up being a little bit of a tearful moment there.
Yeah, it could have been a big incident there. You can see Angers, he's not actually looking to overtake. He was quite happy to give Carlos Dieguez the position on track ahead because he can have to save fuel, and he's not letting the Arnage competition driver get any further ahead. He's keeping him within that half a second gap, and it looks to be very good. Even though they're not currently leading the race, they should, you would imagine, find themselves in a much better position after this round of pit stops. It all does depend, though, on what we see Arnage competition do, what decisions they make. Do they opt for a change of tyres, maybe have a nice couple of quick out laps and see if that's enough to maybe do an offset and maybe offset the advantage that Angers would get by that pit stop later on with taking less fuel? Maybe they'll cancel out. It's going to be difficult, but I think for me, Arnage competition have to roll the dice. They have to make a decision now about what they're going to do in terms of tyres. They need to be committed. They don't need to think and make the decision as they're coming into the pits. They need to decide what they're going to do and give that driver in the car, give Carlos Rodriguez every sort of idea of what he needs to do. Can he take some life out of the tyres now because they're going to be coming off, or does he need to baby them a little bit to help out his teammate?
Yeah, that's... they could do whatever they want, I think, pretty much here. But looking at the pace that Gaetan Angers has been running at throughout this stint, Edward, it does sort of lead one to believe that they might just have been saving their tires to make sure they have that little bit extra to shoot with at the end of it. but we'll see.
It could be. It could also be used just to have that tyre in reserve, even if it's coming off, just to really utilise it on those sort of laps when they have clear air, because they know that Digas is going to come in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, and the situation, I think, is that if Diegas doesn't take tires, they won't take tires. And if Diegas does take tires, they probably are going to take tires in the end, depending on their own tire
what he does.
Exactly. And they can afford to, because they do have those laps in the bank. And it's a prime position to be in. No matter what, the tires are going to be slightly fresher. That's just a few laps here. I think we're talking 2 or 3 laps that they did extra. But those 2 or 3 laps, that's quite a bit in the end. It's sort of 5-6 minutes of running, and it's going to make it go quite a bit further. If they can mirror it yet again here, Edward, for the second stint, which we be having been out ahead for quite a bit of the stint. I don't necessarily believe they're going to go that much further, but they don't need to as well. There's another part of it as well, that they're going to have to fuel just that slight bit less towards the end of the race. That's another advantage going in that direction.
Yeah.
But it all comes with the risk of being, slowed down by traffic. Oh, and that's almost the moment there with the...
That's the commitment coming through, the commitment in the cones.
Is that the Bra Porsche? I think that's the Bra Porsche indeed, of Lander van der Brande. Oh my word, that was a rather sketchy moment.
A little bit spicy. Just a touch, but I'm just having to think about how this battle and how this fight is going to come through. And if you are on large competition, you have to force Valkyrie into making a decision about what they do with the tyres. I think the best way to do that is by staying out and having the ability to think, right, we could, if the tyres look good enough, see if you can take them till the end of the race. And then when Valkyrie come in, they'll look at their wears on their tyres, their percentages, and see, can we make it to the end? Can we do what they do? Or is it worth us just taking tyres and hoping we catch them by the end of the race, even if we're going to lose time in the pit stop? That is the decision that I think they will have to force Valkyrie into making. If they take tyres, then it's a no-brainer. Valkyrie can also then take tyres and be on the podium. But I think if Arnage doesn't take tyres, that leaves Valkyrie with the decision to make.
Yeah.
It all depends, though, if that car can go to the end. If it has life enough in the tyres to go, then they can make the decision. But I think it's probably best to try and take that set of tyres that are currently on the car to the end race. If the wears are something like 60%, maybe even 65%, that's when you maybe decide maybe it's not best to. So it's a tricky decision for them to make. But if the tyres are good enough, I'd just say go to the end and force Valkyrie into making that decision.
It's all gonna reveal itself, Edward, in the next 5-7 minutes or so. We're coming in towards the final hour of this race, a race that I think at least has gone through quite quickly. It's been very, very good. It's been a close race so far, and close for the lead, at least in BLC 1, as we've seen before this year, but even more so, I think, than maybe any of the other races. We do have a bit of a battle going on as well between Thomas Stockmans and Hendrik de Gravet. Stockmans down in 6th place in the 100 Arnage BMW, and of course that is the only BMW in BLC 3. It is the best BMW per se as well, but from a team, just how capable they are. We know, Edward, we've seen them on so many occasions be really strong, but the car, I think, just doesn't really fit the track for him here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. We've seen that car come into life at various other venues. I mean, Le Mans was a real circuit for that car. The straight line speed, the acceleration at slow speeds as well was something that car really excelled in. But around here, it does tend to struggle just a little bit more. You can see that while he does have the straight line speed, it isn't quite working his favour. The best possible point for this car to be at now is out of this final corner and trying to make a move, maybe up the inside in towards turn 1, but it does struggle a lot on the brakes, that car, and that sort of almost nerfs it in a sense. It takes away its biggest strength, is the top end speed, because it can't stop it quick enough.
That was quicker. It's going to be a lunge, though. Oh, the front end goes in nicely. That is a sweet move pulled off there by Thomas Stockmans. And let's just see it from another angle here. A nice dive. No real fight as well here from the Flemish GT4 machine, the Aston there. I think it's one of those cases where you seem to know that, the clock has... it's over midnight,
Yeah, there sadly wasn't much he could do about that. Realised that Thomas Stockmans was going to come through one way or the other. Here we go with Carlos Dieguez going out for one more lap, maybe even a couple more on this stint of the race as we get towards lap 63. You'd imagine lap 64 is probably the time to make that pit stop, being as they came in on lap 32. See, 32 times 2 is 64, so we'll see if they've been able to make the stints perfectly line up enough 32 lap stints across the board, but we shall see. I mean, this is a round that certainly helped out for the fuel usage, because we have come to various other rounds and seen drivers take splashes and dashes at the end, but around here it's a track that uses the tyres a little bit more than it uses the fuel. Not as flat out around the course of a lap here than you are tracks, say, through Le Mans. So of course drivers are able to make the fuel last a little bit longer. Gaetan Angers happily sitting in behind, even though Carlos Dieguez is doing all he can do, setting personal bests of the race thus far. 1 minute 54.64, that car's best time. Fabio Vasush actually doing the fastest lap of the race across the grid by going a little bit quicker, 154.63, which just shows what could have been for the other Valkyrie car. They have a lot of pace, but sadly a few mistakes here and there, and they just haven't been able to make the most of it. But of course they will be happy sharing a podium with their teammates. It's just difficult to know what steps of the podium they will be on. Will it be pole? Will it be the top step? Or will it be both of them having to settle for second and third?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's going to be second and third, but saying that, Basuk has been closing the gap down to around 10 seconds over the course of the stint, so never say never, and it's sort of also a never say die attitude from the number 7 car here. We'll see just what the final round of pit stops will do for them as well, as we do have the first couple of cars in here. It's Kenny Hedemans for PSR by RPM, and Jeroen Vatlet in the sim world, that the fast machine. And first to take their second pit stops, saying that actually, I think we've had Nick Stope and Didi de Vlaming in, but that's probably earlier in the race, if I'm completely mistaken. Yeah, Stope has been in for a while. So, interesting to see still just that half a second between Dieguez and Angers, and somebody's had a bit of a moment there up ahead. That was Smoke. And whatever just happened, I don't know there, but a bit of a moment to say the very least. Smoke maybe just from the grass up ahead, or from the gravel.
Yeah, not entirely sure what was going on, but in my expert commentary analysis, something definitely occurred. Not sure what, but something happened, and we'll find out hopefully and talk about it when we know. But for now, what we do know is that this battle will continue to rage on until one of them comes into the pits. Most likely Carlos Dieguez, barring a colossal mess up with the fuel strategy by Gaetan Angers, as the replay coming through.
Yeah, that's the course of whatever smoke we saw before that came from the tires of Gregory Bruard, who's just had the rear turn on him. Keep on turning. And you'll see the two leading BLC ones fly up, I think, in a moment's time. Yeah, there they come. Whoop. And that's why we saw the smoke before.
So
mystery solved. Dieguez in the pits.
Coming in.
So this will be interesting.
BLC1 driver, Carlos Dieguez, going to hand over to his teammate.
See what kind of angle gives us the best shot here as he comes into the pits. And we're going to see if it's just going to be fuel or if they're going to take the tires here. Of course, a driver swap. Jimmy and Toons Coming back into the car here, Besuchen as well in the second Valkyrie car, so they're not going as long. Interesting one here.
We'll find out in about
as well.
20-15 seconds what they're going to be doing with the fuel situation and with the tyres rather. That car will probably come onto the jacks if it is going to come onto the jacks in the next about 5 or so seconds. Obviously it takes a little while to get the fuel into the car. You can hear the car revving up, so that means it's not going to take tyres, and that is exactly what we were thinking. It's forcing now Valkyrie into making the decision. I mean, the Belcar eSports, the other car, currently with Jonathan Poulet behind the car, behind the wheel, has also opted not to take tyres. So, Gaetan Auger.
Poulet is out.
Yeah, Poulet has come out. So, Valkyrie competition, the number 7 car, what is essentially the maiden car, the number 1 car of that 2-car entrant, opting to not take tyres. So that tells us that maybe the setup for Valkyrie competition, the tyres can last that long. But what will Gaetan Auger opt to do? What do you think? I can go as well. These tyres can last, or do you think these aren't good enough? I'll take tyres. I've got the advantage of having a shorter fuel stop, so my tyre stop won't be too much of a sacrifice. I think basically gamble on being able to get not Jonathan Poulet, rather, Jimmy and Toons. But for me, if the tyres are good enough, you stick it out. You come into the pits, you get that same pair of tyres on, or you keep that same pair of tyres on, rather, same set, rather, and see what happens. It's going to be difficult, though, for Antunes to have a blistering outlap because his car's going to be fully laden with fuel and he's going to be on old tyres. So this is not going to be a quick outlap, and that's going to really sort of hurt him in terms of being able to go for the undercut.
Yeah, that's certainly not a perfect position to be in, but the undercut was never really going to be on. This is an overcut situation, Edward. Because it's going to be a shorter stop regardless, just on the fuel alone for Auger and the Valkyrie 77 machine. The gap between Antunes now and Jonathan Poulet, just 6 seconds as well here. You have to wonder if Poulet can pile on the pressure and go really quickly here. Is he going to be able to close that down? It's not a lot of bad traffic that Antunes will have to have in order to have company from the could say first of the two.
The little setup that he's got as well. We can see on our screens now his little setup, all of his little trophies down there. Maybe they'll try and see if he can add another one from winning the race tonight. A little virtual trophy, and of course a one for winning the overall season. But of course he has to get through this round and the 24 hours to the Zolder, which can make or break a season. How many times has it throughout the time of us covering this virtual Belcar Championship that drivers have lost out from a moment, from damage, from an accident in that final race of the season?
Yeah, with so many points on offer at 6 hours or 12 hours and at the finishing line as well, it's really one where you can pick up a massive points haul, and on the other hand, if you have bad luck early in the race and doesn't really manage to get the recovery you need, you could be in dire straits as well. Oh, that's the Bra Porsche. He's going to sort of be holding up and Toons ever so slightly there. Even it didn't look too terrible for Jimmy and Toons was in that Bra Porsche. Did a pretty good job of getting out of the way quickly, but still, it all adds up. And Toons 57 seconds, so he has lost time on Gaetan Auger after exiting the pits, and you would expect Auger to be quite a bit quicker as well, as with the same sort of wear on the tires, but with a full load for Jimmy and Toons on these lap versus an empty car, more or less, for Gaetan Auger. That's also where the advantage came from before, and we'll see just how much it will play into the hands of the number 77 Valkyrie car. It's out ahead there, still waiting to see them in the pits. Meanwhile, Jonathan Poulet's lost about a second's worth of time over that final lap. We'll see if
came
this
in on lap 34, so we'll look to see if they come in on lap 68. That will obviously mean that they've been able to extend their stints across 2 laps more than everyone else, and they seem to be coming through to start lap 68, so at the very least they will make it to lap 68, maybe even 69. That'd be nice if they can just about manage to extend their stint even further this time by. They didn't have as much time in the slipstream though, and you consider they were leading for majority of that second stint. Gaetan Angers has been doing a great job, I think, just in managing to save the fuel a little bit.
I'm afraid we've had a
clutching even through here. Everywhere he seems to be clutching this huge amount of smoke there for the Beta Brab car up ahead. I'm not sure if that was involved or rather just a witness. Not what Angers wants on what could be his in-lap into the pits from the race lead. All of this drama up ahead is not going to help him one bit. But of course, saving fuel is probably going to help him that little bit more. So we'll see as he powers out of the way from the hairpin up towards the Schumacher S. Not going to get held up here. We'll probably catch up to the Porsche up in front, going through the next left-right complex, and shouldn't be held up too much actually. So Gaetan Angers getting a nice little bit of good fortune his way with the traffic. Let's have a look at the replay. It was Jesper Schunakers of the Beta Brab Lamborghini involved in the incident. Does it just snag the rear? Oh, you downshift too much. The sort of tail end bites and spins him around. Holds onto the brakes, does the right thing to make sure his car is predictable. Then gets way off the circuit, reversing. Nicely done.
So we join the battle for 5th place as well here with 75. We're just ahead of Håkan Grebstad. These two drivers have had their second stops as well, so this is going to be to the line for both of these cars. In the battle for the top 5. Gaetan Angers gained another few seconds, and he's doing the nice lap, Edward. He's gone on to lap 69 of the race. He's done the nice thing.
He's doing it. It's going to be very nice as well for his race and for Valkyrie. It's like a rookie's race, you have to say, because of that extension of the stint. I mean, I'm amazed that he's been able to do that, to be fair, because his teammate had a lot more slipstream to work with. So we'll see what happens when they come into the pits and how it all shapes out. But for my money, it is looking very nice and comfortable for the 77 Valkyrie car. In that last lap, even with all of the traffic, they only lost about 3 tenths to Intunes, who will inevitably have to face traffic himself somewhere down the line. Just looking at the gaps as well, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle for Intunes. You can see him scratching his forehead. He's looking up at the delta, looking at it all the time. He's just trying to see what he can find, but I don't know if he can find much more. He's just going to have to hope that something goes wrong for Valkyrie, and it doesn't look to be going that way at the moment.
No, something has to go quite badly wrong indeed. It seems, of course, can't quite be sure of that. So they might have an ace up their sleeve, although right now it doesn't quite look like it. It could be pure pace here on the final stint, but you have to hand it to Valkyrie. It's been brilliant tactically, and they've pulled it off to perfection so far. They've got 45 minutes left of the race here in a moment as he just goes across the curbing there, which should be okay. I don't think that's deemed an unsafe pit entry. They would have known better, I think, if that was the case. Into the pits comes Gaetan Angers. He's going to hand over the car again, and it's going to be down to Oscar Pai, I think, to finish the race for the French Valkyrie outing here, the 77 machine. Into the pits he comes. We don't expect him to do tires or anything. Oscar Pai in the car, but expect the pit stop to be quite a bit shorter than what we've seen for the other cars. That's 3 or 4 laps less And they will have done, and even more, I think, because the Antunes came out of the pits there on lap 64.
They could get going any minute now, to be honest, Hasser. I think we might see him get moving. Here we go now. And Tunes came in and was stationary for 39.38 seconds. Oscar Pie stationary for 31.52, which is a massive amount of time on. That is reflected with where they are out on circuit now. Jimmy and Tunes just now braking for turn 1, whereas Oscar Pie is going to be on his way already into turn 3.
14 seconds seems to be the advantage, Edward. That is absolutely huge coming into the final stint.
And you can just... I'm not sure if you can see it on our screens now, but Jimmy Tunes is... not looking too pleased about that. You could just see, as soon as he saw it, you could see the time where he noticed the delta, and then all of a sudden the face sort of fell a little bit, realizes that he's going to probably have to settle for second place because he knows that Oscar Pie was really quick in that first hour of the race. Now, the last hour, it's going to be a big mountain to climb, that 14 seconds. Jonathan Poulet up the inside of the 81, that being Roland van Utrecht, the only Porsche Cayman in the BLC3 class. There's Decibit Racing Team now hands over to their second driver for their final change. The first, actually, BLC3 car to do so, as we await Fabrice Cornelis, Robbie Janssens, and Matthias Maas.
Fabrice Cornelis has been in. He's
been in twice? Oh, yes, he has. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because he's back in the car. He started for them, so he'll be the one to finish the race as well. And up ahead, the gap is indeed still 14 seconds for Oscar Pie. That is a handy advantage. So we're nearing the final 40 minutes of racing here. And to be honest, the 9 seconds that are separating Jimmy Antunes and Jonathan Poulet is sort of looks maybe even likely to well, it hasn't really been going in the direction of Jonathan Poulet so far, at least this stint, but we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, we'll also just follow a lot of the other developments throughout the race and all the different classes as well. We are waiting, of course, for the final pit stops across BLC3 and, of course, BLC4. I think we are waiting for Nuno Henrique, who's currently leading at that class, to make his second and final stop. At least final mandatory stop. Of course, drivers needing to make 2 pit stops for 2 driver changes. Poulet, I've seen him, I think, just actually dropping back maybe from Antunes rather than closing the gap down. It doesn't quite appear that the pace is there in the number 7 Valkyrie car. Follow now up through the Schumacher S's left-hand curb over the right. Nicely balanced. That car does look extremely planted, but plant isn't necessarily what you need around here. You need a little bit of twitchiness. You need the car to be almost on edge, because sometimes, especially around here, actually an edgy car is quicker. If you have it too on rails and too calm, it can almost understeer too much, and that loses you a lot of time if you are understeering around here, because of the nature of the circuit, because of the style of corner that you have. There's sort of several medium speed flowing corners. If you get a little bit of understeer coming, that throws you offline and completely disrupts your flow throughout the whole lap. Whereas a little bit of oversteer, a little bit of edginess in the car, you can get the turn, you can keep it on the line, you can keep it nice and tight through the corners that need to be tight. Sort of get that rear sort of swing out when you go through the quick directional changes that are needed throughout the chicanes. And towards the hairpins where you can brake later and go for a later apex, switch in, pitch in nicely. It seems just, I think, for the moment, that it's 2 on rails.
Yeah.
But of course, we do see Valkyrie competition. The other car, the 77, is quicker. I'm not sure if there's a difference in setup between those two, or if it's just driver preference. Maybe they're not enjoying the circuit. It's a polarizing circuit. Not actually everyone loves this circuit as much as I do, which I know is madness because I absolutely love this place. I think it's brilliant. One of my favourite circuits to race around, but I know not everyone is in agreement.
No,
maybe that's just what it comes down to. It's drivers liking different circuits.
Yeah, I think this is one of the tracks that does seem to have, or to get at least, a sort of a worse reputation than it deserves in terms of its raceability. It's of course not always great. With the bigger the cars are, and of course the more downforce dependent they are, the worse it sort of gets. I will though say that the unpredictable nature of the real life weather at the Nürburgring always makes it watchable. And then of course when you get a multi-class race like this going on here, it's something quite different, which of course also is shown every year at the 24 hours of the ring. Although that of course also entails getting around the Nordschleife, which is something different, you could say, at the very least, than what we're seeing here tonight. Anyways, it's a really nice driver's track, I feel like, the new Nürburgring, though it does stem from the early 1980s. But a nice driver's track with a great flow to it, as you said. It's and it's somewhere that will really test the mettle of the car in terms of how the chassis is balanced, and we really want a car that's able to rotate, although it cannot really be unpredictable in any way. If it is, it's going to be a very hard car to drive around here, and understeer will kill the lap time. So I think also probably a pretty hard track to set up the car perfectly for.
You need a car that's good at everything, and that's very difficult to find, isn't it, Asa?
Yeah, that's true, and especially with the cars that we have on grid here tonight, with a lot of the different classes, especially in BLC 3, it's very pronounced, the differences between the cars in BLC 3, and as we've seen it before, it makes for some interesting viewing there indeed.
Yeah, for me, I think the reason why we're seeing the BLC 3 cars is so dominated by the Aston is that it's just a really good all-rounder, whereas the Porsche and the BMW, they're specialists at individual circuits. At certain types of circuit, they are specialists and they will be the fastest car. BMWs would dominate at Daytona. They're excellent at Le Mans, even to an extent at Spa-Francorchamps. They are really, really good because of the long straights through there. Porsches, they're excellent at circuits that are a little bit more twitchy. Even places like Catalonia, they are brilliant at just getting the car pitched in and nice into the corners. Places where you are just constantly turning through, getting through. Even maybe Zolder would be a really good circuit, I think, for the Porsche. So we might see that come through. But the Aston is nice and decent everywhere.
2 seconds, Edward has been chopped off the advantage of Oscar Pyre, but he is finding himself in a pretty hefty traffic jam here at the moment. And that will, of course, impede his progress a bit here, but you can very much say the same for Jimmy and Toons, as he's getting held up by one of the JWS Astons, the number 20, on his way through the stadium section. And Toons, however, such a pacey gentleman, he's extended his advantage down to Jonathan Poulet to around 11.5 seconds now, so certainly consolidating second. Also catching up to the leaders. He's caught up 2 seconds. It's still a fair bit of time left, but this is by no means over yet here.
No, it's definitely not, but of course, Jimmy and Tunes' relative pace in trying to catch up is going to be, of course, scuppered by the traffic. So while Oscar Player's got the worst of it, and we'll always see that time fall down, we'll also see it start to increase a little bit as Jimmy and Tunes will always get to the traffic second afterwards, so we'll have to see what happens here. As oh my word, that was Stefan Kalbrecht getting a big hit up the rear. Not sure who that was. Whoever it is going to be in trouble.
Yeah, no, that was not Enriquez. Enriquez passed him, but that's a good question actually. Stefan Kalbrecht was the driver who got spun. I wonder who it was who came through. Jeroen Wadlet comes into the pit now. Simworld.be fast 35 minutes still remaining on the clock. But all to play for at the head of BLC 1, at the head of BLC 2. It's Maxim Vandenhove ahead of Christoph Raas and Ronnie Heyman. BLC 3 led by Fabrice Cornelis and the Simtech E-Team ahead of Yuri Crispin in the 23 Traxxas by JWS Motorsports Aston, and then Thomas Stockman's up into third now in the 100 Anage BMW. In BLC 4 it's David Toth for Anage competition in the 18 Audi ahead of the Hyundais of Flemish and Thomas Leysen, and of course B-Sim Racing and Jelle Verstraeten.
Going good so far for Oscar Pai, who's extended, and something must have happened to Jimmy and Tuneshasse, as that gap is now 17 seconds.
Oh,
showing up on my screen, and I'm not sure if it's showing the same for you, but yeah, something has happened, because now the gap from Antunes to Poulet is only 8 seconds.
Yeah,
so something really must have gone wrong for Arnage.
3-4 seconds it seems. Let's see, just a quick look if we can have a spot here. I don't. That Lambo was on the tail of them already before here, so I don't think this was it. Maybe just a scrappy lap or two, maybe some unlucky traffic or whatever's happened. But whatever's happened, it hasn't been great for Jimmy and Tunes. The chances of catching up to Oscar Pai and taking the win here is getting slimmer, to say the very least. It's going to be a big ask now. 17.5 seconds to a driver of Oscar Pai's caliber. Of course, given that he doesn't make a mistake up ahead, might go and be pretty difficult. As it's Anage on Anage. Oh, and he's going into the pits. He's coming into the pits.
Something happened.
He must have caught some damage somewhere. There or a penalty, I don't know. On incident points, I don't know if that's it. He shows 15 off tracks for me for them, so I'm not quite sure if they've had something there.
Then it's not just an off track, it's if they've got 4x contact with other cars at some point they've driven through, which does tend to mean an incident point penalty, and that's see it now to be Valkyrie competition 1-2, and Tunes coming out of the pit lane now, just 5 seconds back from Jonathan Poulet. You see him just at the top of the shot there, coming through turn 2, the left-hander. While it might not be game on for the race lead, it is certainly all systems go for second now.
Yeah, Anage needs to see what they can salvage from this late stage drama, just half an hour left of the race. And a drive-through penalty on incident points, because we didn't see anything come through from race control, and they haven't been in any incidents as such, as far as I could see. They did have an issue, but I don't think they picked up an off-track. They must have had some kind of car contact, Edward. I think that can be the only real, because it didn't show up on our event view, and of course, as you know, an off-track would indeed show up. So whatever happened to Jimmy and Tunes and Anage competition, it wasn't great for them. And it's left Jonathan Poulet with half a minute advantage down to Jimmy and Tunes. Of course, 25 seconds or so to teammate Jonathan Poulet, just in the vicinity of that at least. And it's taken a little bit of life out of the lead battle. It's blown a little bit more life into a new battle for second place, as Anage competition is on the comeback. The battle for third here, Thomas Stockmans is doing a very good job of keeping up with, and not only keeping up with, but also catching up to Yuri Crispin up ahead. And then Edward Knight for Ignium and Stuart Reynolds are also close to one another. Well, that's not Edward Knight, and it's Kim de Haet up ahead for Flemish indeed, yeah, my apologies. The 867 Flemish machine 6th at the moment, and then Edward Knight on the tail of them. And I'm afraid we've had a problem for Christoph Hermans and Jean van Lip. Here it comes for Hermans. I think he just goes wide, picks up a simple off-track incident there, but no real worries. I think worse it must have been for Jean van Liemt and the Brab 911 Cup machine. Oh, he just pulls off.
Lets him through. Very, very strange. He almost goes to a complete standstill, which almost tells me there was a slowdown that he was having to serve and had to get it served then and there. Otherwise, he would have been slapped with a stop-go or drive-through penalty.
Yeah, that
Very interesting indeed. But another interesting thing, Hasse, is the time differential between Poulet and Antunes. Antunes has closed that gap down. It was about almost 6 seconds. Now it's down to, well, it was closer to about 5.5. Now it's near enough 4.5.
Yeah,
Traffic
but
coming
then
through.
exactly. I was just about to say, Antunes probably going to lose a little bit on the traffic here, and I think that it's going to ebb and flow. We'll see how quickly it flows towards Kimi Antunes in the end. But so it seems to be back and forth with traffic that does give it and take it through different situations. So it's always going to be
tricky
an
for
one.
Antunes. He could lose a lot of time here. I know they can see that TCR car PLC 4 class is lifting out of it, which is very considerate of him. Maybe for his own good as well, lifting out so he doesn't get the car right up inside him on the apex of the corner and realizes it just helps him to sacrifice that bit of time. Let's have a look though at the lap times as they get over the line. Jonathan Poulet's last time was a 56.67. Jimmy Antunes 0.6 quicker, 56.06. Could be a very exciting battle for second place here. Irish competition hungry to salvage something, anything, if they can, from this race to get it over the line and to get that second place that I think they were already resigning themselves to after the pit stop and strategy masterclass, you have to say, from the 77 Belcar eSports car. They were quick, but they also made it count in the strategy. And Irish competition, well, they felt that they did everything right. They didn't make any mistakes. It just turns out they weren't quick enough on the day in the strategy. Maybe they didn't fuel save enough. But it's come back to bite them as well. They've been taking a few too many liberties, I think, with off tracks, and then a couple of contacts here and there might have seen them go over the incident limit, and that's really hurt them. Gap now has set down to under 4 seconds between first, or not between first and second, between second and third. Gap now 3.8. It's Thomas Stockman's. Ooh.
He's sending it here. Absolutely. Oh, and he's gonna dive immediately for the move there on Yuri Chicane. Left no chance of defending it. Thomas Stockman's up into second place. He might have heard a thing or two about us talking about the BMW not being quite competitive here. He's showing us otherwise. And he's smashing it at the moment, although they are a minute down on Fabrice Cornelis leading. But that car has been so well running here tonight. There's been no
all
issues
season as well. You've got to
all
say.
season, you have to say. It's true, Edward.
That number 2 BLC3 car, that Aston Martin, has been just a dream. I think you've got to say there's been a moment where you've ever really seen them put a foot wrong. And it looks to be continuing on now as they have a healthy 1 minute advantage to Thomas Stockman's and Yuri Chicane in behind. So for now, it appears to be first place foregone conclusion in the BLC3 class. I'm really excited to keep following this battle in BLC1, because the gap now, 3.2 seconds. It's been really taken down a notch. That last lap again, it was 0.6. Antunes quicker than Poulet. It's getting there, and it could be very close by the end of the race. If this rate carries on, he'll be close and maybe have about 15 minutes, 10 minutes to see what he can do to overtake. Oof, this could be, I mean, it's already very exciting, but this could be monumental, a battle for second place.
I'll tell you what, Edward, a bit of an anecdote myself from the very recent Petit Le Mans, where my team and myself picked up our very first special event win, coming with indeed a last lap overtake, taking the win by 0.7 of a second after 10 hours of racing, and that was was pretty much that was insane indeed. An edge of the seat stop. We had our star driver Martin in the car, and he was doing an amazing job of pulling back the leader through the final 30-40 minutes specifically. Coming down into the final 10 minutes, he was really starting to reel him in. It all culminated in the last lap pass on the outside of turn 1 at Road Atlanta. So we might be up for something that, like, although with 25 minutes, Edward, and a gap that seems to be relatively rapidly diminishing in the favor of Jimmy and Toons, who's catching up to Jonathan.
That's full second that time.
Yeah, exactly. And Toons is going quickly at the moment.
So it might come down to it being with 10 minutes to go. Maybe it'll come down with 20 minutes to go. There's 25 minutes remaining in this race. Jimmy Tunes is, well, had a fire lit in him, you have to say. He has been absolutely rapidly trying to close that gap down to second place. But has he got enough in the tank? It's going to be tricky because he's going to be pushing so hard. He's already served his penalty, to be fair, for the incident limit, so he's got loads in reserve. He can afford to run wide at a few corners and, you know, shave off the tenths here and there. It's got enough in reserve now.
Yeah, you would expect so. And it's just an all-out dash to the line from here. It's all about just really having to send it all the way through. New fastest lap there, though, for Fabrice Cornelis in BLC 3 with a 2 minutes 4 straight.
Oh, this BLC 4 car could be in a very awkward spot for him. Toons is going to catch up to him. He's going to have to be very committed onto the brakes into the hairpin, not in the hairpin, the chicane rather, over the bumps, and he just about gets it nailed down, but didn't help him too much. He's still been able to gain, though, on Jimmy and Toons' gap now as he exits the final bend. Maybe 1.6 seconds. He is absolutely electrifying with his pace at this moment. Still taking down. That was about 9/10 of a second. So, I mean, Jonathan Poulet is doing all that he can do. But what do we say, Hassett? Catching is one thing. Passing is something else entirely.
Yeah, it's been said on many occasions, and I think made famous by the late great Murray Walker, the legend himself. But it is very true, and especially on a track like this, Edward, of course, on the GT3s and with the long back straight, if you're close enough, it's very hard to defend into turn 1. But for the rest of the track, you sort of really, if you're able to put the car in the right place, it can be really hard to get past. And we'll see.
What if Jimmy knows he's on screen? Can you give us a wave, do you reckon? Oh, he's just gone. I think he's too focused for that, to be fair. We don't want to distract him when he's focusing on the task at hand, trying to catch up to Jonathan Poulet. I'm so used to saying he's catch up to Oscar Pye because that's been the battle all race long was for a majority of tonight, and Toons versus Pye. But one little moment, one little slip up has suddenly brought Poulet into the mix. How close could this battle be, I wonder? Jonathan Poulet actually having to lift and coast. So maybe they short-fueled it at the pit stop and now they're not quite able to go full pelt, full throttle. That might be a worry for Poulet in the Belcar competition. They can't afford to fight too much. Because if they do, they might find themselves running out of fuel at the end. We'll have to keep watching this as we do approach now the final near enough 20 minutes of racing. Jonathan very committed in towards turn 1. That's going to help him nicely to build up a bit more of a margin to Toons. We'll find that LC2 Porsche in slightly awkward spot. I believe that was that Renzo Eulenbroek that he's just gotten through on the BLC 2 class lead that we haven't seen too much of.
Oh yeah.
Again, another drive. Oh my word, what was going on there? There was a car off the circuit that was just going on. Was that Schumacher's?
It's a good point. We'll see. I think it might have been either Jeroen Vatlet or Jens Hosen. Oh my word. It is Jeroen
Is that
Bartlett.
really Crispin?
No, that's Jens Hoosens
Oh.
and Jeroen Bartlett. Crispin's in the pits.
I saw Crispin in the pits and thought that was a bit of an incident involving him, but it turns out regular stop. Tell you what, that Sim District GT4 car and BLC 3 classes not been able to catch a break. Jens Goosens has been really in the war, both him and his teammate, to be fair.
Yeah. And that luck there. They've been extending it there, Poulet. I mean, they might just have been trying to save tires and save fuel to be able to surely go all out to the line. Remember, they had a very short final stop, but on the same lap as Arnage competition, Jonathan Poulet and the number 7 machine there of Valkyrie competition. So it might just be that they're having to save a little bit more fuel on this final stint to be able to be absolutely certain that they'll make the checker flag of the race, and that could have enabled Antunes to catch up. And now that he's on the tail, they'll want to see if they can just get the foot down basically and keep it there for the rest of the race.
We'll see again, using all the runoff area, taking those 1Xs and gaining that time back down to Jonathan Poulet, but it's very interesting, isn't it? You can see the onboard, he seems to be able to close corner after corner on Jonathan Poulet, as we see that number 7 Valkyrie car blink in and out just a touch, and that's going to be worrying. Jimmy won't know where that car is always going to be at all times when he's going side by side for second place, because you would imagine he's going to close that gap down and be right there or thereabouts. As we do come into definitely the end closer and closer in sight for Oscar Pai, who's driven, I mean, both him and his teammate, they have driven beautifully today, haven't they?
They have indeed. There's been no finger really to put on that performance so far, and they just need to keep it going for these last, just in the vicinity of 20 minutes. And they will be to the better. Let's scratch that.
Gaetan Anger being able to save that those extra bits of fuel. It was 35, I think it was, laps on the second stint, 34 done in the first by Jonathan Poulet, and it was excellently managed to measure drive. And Jimmy and Tunes is trying to have a bit more of a, all guns blazing drive, and he needs to, because he's going to have to close up to and pass Jimmy and Tunes sooner rather than later. Traffic has not necessarily been Jimmy's friend. But you can't always get the luck, and it's about the luck you make for yourself. And the best thing that Jimmy can do is just lap as quick as he can and bring that gap down as close as he can. It did just drop underneath the 1 second threshold. That's the time when you can really start to think Jimmy could have this position nailed down by the end of the race. We've got, like I said, he could be in striking distance for the final 10-15 minutes. We're approaching that 15-minute mark now, Hasse. It could be very close come the end of this race.
Yes, it could. It could be touch and go, and even before the end, it could be a back and forth battle, depending on whether Poulet is basically able to attach himself to the rears of Antunes. Also, with the traffic to play in its hand, maybe in the final battle here, as that could also make or break it for any of them, basically, within the final 15 minutes. But it's almost, they're so close now, about 0.7 of a second. It does look to be a difficult one for Jonathan Poulet, as Jimmy and Tunes, to me, in this situation here, just sort of looks like the faster driver. The 18 car gets well out the way in that situation as well.
Here we go. Final 50 minutes, game on.
0.3 of a second separating the two, Edward. Less now. It's just going to be a lunge, I think, this time around. Just a look from Antunes. An early look, though. He tries to hold his cards close, not to reveal his hand too early. I'm afraid there's been a problem here for Thomas Laysen and Flemish. The Hyundai just rotates and rotates. As the rear slips, it seems very difficult to get it to drag back onto the circuit here. Back with the lead, the duel for a second place. Oscar Paya, 26 seconds to the good now. Of these two, here comes Antunes, shown the outside. Really a chance of getting through there around the outside at the hairpin. It's going to be reserved for the dreams, I think, Edward. That's something I've seen very often, at least, pulled off in reality.
Could be close coming out of here, depending on the run through this right-hander. It's crucial to get on the power nice and early for the run down in towards the hairpin, but it doesn't seem to be close enough for Jimmy Antunes to properly make a diving move. If he does, it'll be from very far back in a risky move, which you can see is not going to come through. Instead, he needs to set up the car nicely through the chicane to pile the pressure on. Poulet maybe making him go defensive in towards the final corner. He doesn't do that, and then it's going to be all about getting the run out of the final bend in towards the first corner. That is the real overtaking area. He's 4/10 back, and with the blinking in and out of Jonathan Poulet, Jimmy Antunes won't be getting the slipstream because the car vanishes. You get hit by the full force of air because iRacing isn't rendering the car ahead to model all of the sort of air being pushed away from you, so you don't get that slipstream effect anymore. So that's another difficulty that Jimmy Antunes is facing. Because the car ahead is blinking occasionally, he's not getting the full effect of the slipstream.
Whatever trick up his sleeve that Jonathan Poulet can use in order to just see if he can slow down Jimmy Antunes here and there. Talking about being slowed down massively here. And nose to tail they are. And down towards the hairpin they run, and it's Antunes on the outside yet again. And Poulet is going to try and hold on the inside, and he blinks. And Antunes is in the wall, and he's across, and he's in the wall. And I think the blinking moment there from Jonathan Poulet made it very hard to judge just what was going on for Jimmy Antunes here. We'll see if we can get a replay, Edward.
I don't know. We have a look at that. We only just got the tail end of it. We need to have a look at the full battle with the overtake and everything. This is it from Jimmy Antunes on board. Knows the car is on his inside. Gets on the power. He just gets on the power too early, I think.
Yeah.
The blinking might have played a part. It might have been a slight distraction. There's the reason why he got on the power too early, but I don't think there was any contact. There was any netcode. It was just Jimmy Antunes desperate to get the run out of the corner, to have the inside up through the S's, but I think it was just too early, and it's a self-inflicted mistake, unfortunately. Jonathan Poulet's in the pits. What has gone on here?
They must have had a connection with one another there. They must have had a touch, because he's gotten that drive-through penalty as well now on the regular iRacing incidents, which means 15 incidents, I think, if I recall correctly. And Jonathan Poulet is now behind Jimmy Antunes by 7.6 seconds. But Antunes has been in the wall. He's carrying damage. There's 11 minutes of racing left here, and God knows which way this is going to swing now. Frankly, Edward, it could go either way. I have no clue how much that's going to cost Antunes, how bad the damage is. It was a relatively heavy impact. It looks okay.
I think Antunes has gotten away with it, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like there's any steering angle damage. We can't see it from this angle, but from the way the car is behaving.
Did you see that dip in on turn-in, though?
It seems that's just sort of how the car handles. It's a very twitchy car, the Lamborghini. if you've ever driven it, it kind of just does that sometimes, and you have to go in and bear it. It isn't too sketchy. It seems fine in a straight line, not crabbing. So for me, Jimmy and Tunes and the pace he's taken through those corners shows that it's not really too badly damaged.
He's
so
gaining on Poulet as well here. Yeah, it's 8 seconds now. Oh, Poulet's been held up probably. But to be fair, Antunes and Anash competition had that very same drive-through penalty earlier, so this has sort of put them on level terms in terms of the drive-through. Sami Favre is having a bit of a blinky moment there. And Oscar Pai, meanwhile, Edward, is out ahead by 32 seconds here, and he's doing a brilliant job.
Yeah, he certainly is. This is an excellent drive from Oscar Pai in the 77 Valkyrie car. Got 10 minutes to go, 10 minutes to save, you've got to say. What will be a first victory for this 77 car, and a well-earned one at that. Rarely do you see strategy and pace coming through, but it's certainly been the case tonight. Very, very quick, very smart with the strategy as well. So for me, they have to be a car to watch and a car to be very excited about coming into the 24 Hours of Zolder at the end of the year. As you follow now the Arnage competition car, the car that had been giving them so much pressure throughout the entire race. Jimmy and Tunes just struggling a little bit with the off tracks and the moments here and there, but then all of a sudden it comes through and it works it brilliantly for him. All of a sudden when Jonathan Poulet has to take his drive-through penalty and everything gets shaken about yet again, but up here the unshakable as ever GTE Racing by Red Ant, a nice healthy advantage, 40 seconds ahead of their nearest car on track, and I believe one of their class rivals. Then coming towards BLC 3, we have a strong number 2 Aston Martin Fabrice Cornelis in Simtag E-Team, going to be bringing it up to the line, and what has been again a race that we haven't really seen too much of them. They haven't really been involved in a fight as such, but they haven't needed to. They were quick in qualifying and they're just as quick in the race, and it's the consistency that's really brought them through, because while we've seen other BLC 3 cars involved in incidents, they've managed to keep their heads above water and get through it nice and cleanly. David Toth, driver that I haven't actually seen before, has racing this season. You might be a newcomer. I'm not sure if your memory might be better than mine if we have seen him before, but if this is his first time, what an impression he has been making and has made so far tonight. A very, very quick driver, and him and his teammate for our Arnage competition have been absolutely rapid.
Yeah, definitely so, and stepping in for Nicola Rupila, might have been, I think it was, the 18 car. Be interesting to see how they do at the 24 Hours of Zolder. Just it's going to open up the Belcar 2 standings widely, though, I think, here, because it's third and fourth being second and first in the standings. Flemish is second, but Hansi Poolmans, they're now third on the road here. They're going to claim good points and probably take that. Probably going to take the lead indeed here with ART Sim Racing not really scoring much. That's going to be very, very close, and it's going to be interesting all the way to the end of it.
Yeah, BLC 4, I think, is going to be completely blown apart by this. From looks of things, our large competition could be in with a nice, healthy advantage coming into the final race of the season. Of course, they need to make sure they have a clean race. As we said before, early incidents in the Belcar 24 can completely ruin your championship campaign because of the sheer amount of points on offer.
Yeah, it's one where you really need to take a it doesn't really make sense when I say it this way, but aggressive yet cautious approach. Yeah. Aggressive in the sense that you want to be up there from as early as in the race as you can be. Cautious in the sense that you really got to be driving at a sort of sustainable pace regardless, and the whole effort of not making any real risky moves along the way is sort of such a fine line to walk, especially at a track like Solder, which is also why it is a tough event to come through without any incidents. I don't think we've seen many teams do that, even regarding that some of the teams that are participating here at the virtual Belcar amongst the very best in the world, per se. So definitely we're going to be in for an absolute treat there, Edward. With 3 minutes on the timer here at the Nürburgring, it does look like the leaderboard is more or less set. And it's just a matter of getting the car the final few meters across the line. After three dramatic hours as well here at the Nürburgring. It's seen the tide swing in different directions. We weren't really expecting necessarily Jimmy and Toons to be able to come back on Jonathan Poulet as he had his accident there, but Poulet having to take a drive-through on the very same lap that happened. And so is the fortunes of those involved in racing. For the time being, it's Mohamed Soram, who's in his BLC 3 Decipit Aston Martin. He's 5th at the moment. And trying to catch up maybe to Stefan Verhofstadt, just 4 seconds up the road here during these final moments of the race.
I have to say, though, that just to fully display how commanding Fabrice Cornelis is in that number 2 Aston Martin is, their last lap was not their best lap, not their slowest lap, but it was a 2:04.15. That is faster than anyone else's car in that class's best lap of the race. So all of the other drivers, their personal bests, have not been able to beat that last lap by Fabrice Cornelis. And we're well into the race. The tyres are shot. Fabrice Cornelis is just seemingly very, very quick, to state the obvious, because he's leading by nearly a minute.
Yeah, a bit of a monster indeed. So right, he's shown that before on plenty of occasion as well. It's the Decipit car being sent through that final chicane, but losing time to Verhofstadt, losing time as well to Jiri Crispijn up ahead. Hansi Poelmans had a bit of a moment, I think, but it was just a quick off track, if I'm not mistaken. And the 999, a little more than that as he cuts the chicane. It's probably going to give him a slowdown penalty as well.
We're aware as well, as we come into the final minute, Hasse, is our race leader, Oscar Pyers. We wait to see him come through now. This long sweeping right-hander. I think we won't be getting the white flag. We'll get the white flag this time by. We won't be seeing the checkered.
No. That is true.
One more lap.
One final lap, and that might... Oh, how poorly that can fit you sometimes if the car's on the limit in terms of fuel.
To be fair, he could quite easily slow down because the car behind Jimmy and Tunes is 34 seconds behind.
He's not going to do it though. He's just going to keep on running. White flag here for the field. And an interesting 3 hours of racing coming towards an end here. Oscar Pai, for all intents and purposes, I think is going to take the win. Here through comes Jimmy and Toons. 7.3 seconds clear of Jonathan Poulet. He's back there in the second of the two Valkyrie cars. And Olivier Bolting, Håkon Grebstad, Kenny Hermans, and Jeroen Vatlet. We've got more Ward Mallets having taken over for Sim Formula Europe. An 8th place at the moment. Renzo Eulenburg, of course, back in the GT by Redan car, and he's leading BLC2 with a healthy margin of 41 seconds to the B-Sim Racing S car, driven by Benjamin de Pape, and then Hansi Polmans and the 999 Flemish Sim Sports car. Jelle Verstraeten, I'm afraid, here. Edward has had a late moment in his Hyundai. Oh, he just loses it on his own. And then just it touches the grass and gets spun even further around, facing in a slightly poor direction there, I think we could safely say. But Edward, it's been brilliant for Valkyrie Excite rookies. The 77 car, Oscar Pai, is going to bring it home here through the chicane and towards the final corner. And that's going to be the checkered flag for him. And it's going to be a well-deserved win after a beautiful race, driven to more or less perfection by the 77 car. There it is across the line to take a beautiful first win. Oscar Pai it is. Jimmy and Toons probably wasn't believing it when he lost the car in his late incident there. He's going to salvage second place and a good points haul ahead of the 24 Hours of Solder in December. And Jonathan Poulet is going to take the final spot on the BLC1 podium. And Edward, here we have the winner, so it seems at least, in BLC2.
Yeah, BLC2 GTE Racing by Red Ant could blow, and probably will blow, this championship wide open here with this race victory. What they desperately need to get their championship back on track. They've had some great moments, some times when it looked to be going their way and then it was taken away from them. But no one's going to take this from them now. Rounding their way through the final corner. A brilliant race from themselves. Hard fought, hard deserved, but excellently driven by Renzo Uhlenbroek. Then we come to BLC3, Hasser and Fabrice Cornelis. Rather that we haven't seen too much of, but you need that sort of a race if you're in the BLC3 class, in those middle classes, to keep yourself nice and out of trouble. Come through and conceive, and respect being shown from the car behind. I think that's Benjamin de Pape, just up behind him, not opting to overtake the BLC3 class leader. Knows it's not worth doing, not worth putting himself into any sorts of squabbles, as Fabrice Cornelis rounds his way through the final corner. A flash of the lights, drink it in and enjoy it. A brilliant race victory.
Solid drive indeed. I think
got a smoke screen down turn one. I think some drivers are enjoying their victories. Renzo Uhlenbroek, I believe, has got a bit of a party going.
We're just awaiting the confirmation of the results. This is the qualifying results. They're not going to be much good, are they? Race results, though. Here they are. Valkyrie Excite rookies. The 77 car takes the win ahead of Anar's competition. And the other Valkyrie car, number 7, 41 seconds down, though, in the end. Sim District Vibe Esports GT3 Green gets 4th ahead of Ignium Motorsports in the 26 car. PSR by IPM in 6th place ahead of SimWorld.be Fast. In 8th, it's Sim Formula Europe, splitting the two SimWorld.be second one being the Rapid car, of course. And then in 10th, Team Beta Brab with the red Sim District Vibe eSports car in 11th, Mac challenged by DB1 in 12th, and then Flemish Sim Sports Black by Viraco in 13th place. And Edward, take us through the results of BLC 2, please.
Thank you very much, Hasse. At BLC 2, race won by GTE Racing by Red Ant. Excellent drive from them. Remzo and Emmerich taking them across the line for a race victory that they desperately needed to keep their championship hopes alive coming into final round, the 24 hours of Zolder. B Sim Racing coming through for another good second place. Going to keep them in the picture as well, with Flemish Sim Sports Yellow a podium. Well done for them, and that keeps them still in the fight with Duct Tape Racing Yellow in 4th. Team Alpha Brab, higher time, number 9 car in 5th place with Duct Tape Racing Red 6th, and ART Sim Racing 7th place, 74 laps down, unfortunately seeming to struggle to get off the marks. Take us through BLC 3 though, please, Hasse.
Another really solid win for the Simtech E team, the number 2 car of Fabrice Canellis and Koen Klubman, winning it by an entire lap ahead of the 100 car of Anage competition, the BMW. Traxxas by JWA's Motorsports, so the 23 and 3rd, taking the last podium spot ahead of the sister Traxxas by JWS Classic Cars. Both of them, of course, Jags. Decipit Racing in the 209 gets 5th ahead of Sim District Vibe eSports AMR GT4. Ignium Motorsports Spark in the 27 car in 7th place. Then Flemish Sim Sports Black in 8th ahead of Sim District Vibe eSport AMR GT4 Red, I think that is. RP Motorsports GT4 by Cruise. And then the Simtech E-Team 86 car in 11th. And with that, Edward, it is the rather diminutive, but still very much existent BLC 4 class.
Yeah, it's going down to BLC 4. If we can get the results up on screen, we'll be able to run you through the finishing order. They're not quite coming up yet, Hasse.
They are on my screen, so I'll take it. It's a nice competition, and the 18 car taking the win yet again through a beautiful race. They're a minute and 13 clear of the Flemish Hyundai of the nice 69 machine. And then B-Sim Racing, 3rd in the 222 car ahead of AC Motorsports eSports AM. And with that said, Edward, I think that concludes our results, and it allows us to go into the interviews department. And we do have our first driver waiting here. It's Nuno Enriquez, of course, of Anage competition and the 18 machine. Nuno, another brilliant win for you guys in BLC 1 or BLC 4 as well. My bad. But in BLC 4, looking very, very strong in the overall standings by now.
Hi everyone, thank you. David did a great work on the qualify as well as in the race. We went to second in the beginning of the race, but David quite quickly went to first and then was just managing the pace and then bring the car home. We were quite close to actually have a drive-through due to off tracks, but we managed to stay within the 14 till the end. It was quite fun though.
And how are you going to approach the final race of the season, the 24 hours of Zolder, in terms of the team setup with the drivers and just approaching the race? Are you going to approach it like you do with one of these 3-hour events, or are you going to do anything differently for such a long and massive race?
I mean, in terms of the drivers that we're going to have, I'm not too sure, to be honest, if we are going to do it 3 or 4 or even more. It's something that we still need to decide. As for the approach, I mean, we now just want to bring the car home. There's no need to push or anything like that. So what we are going to try is to have the less contacts or off tracks that we can. If we can, no contacts at all, of course. But that's what we're going to try to achieve. Bring the car home safely, if not in first, in second. but just have fun. It's a long race, so there's no rush.
Brilliant performance today, from you and David, and as it's been throughout the season as well. And huge congratulations to you on the result. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to while you're on the air here?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I want to thank you guys as well for your work, as well to everyone who's watching at home, and mainly I want to thank Carnage, and all our sponsors that make it possible for us to run here.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us as well. It's been a pleasure, and all the best coming into the final race at Zolder as well.
Likewise, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. We're quickly going to bring in the next driver, because there are plenty to talk to, and it's a winner indeed. Oscar Pai, that was a beautiful race today. Strategy seemed to work out perfectly for you, really playing into your hands, not only putting the pressure on Anaj, as we've seen you do on many occasions, but actually getting the better of them today. How did that feel?
Yeah, it was a really good race today. Gaetan and I did a good job. Slowdown for me at the beginning of the race put us in difficulty, but then I managed to come back and just stay fuel behind them. And yeah, our strategy was based on stay fuel, and so then last stint was just about chilling at the top.
A good way of putting it, chilling at the top. It's like you climb a mountain and you're taking a bit of time at the top to enjoy the view. But did you expect that kind of advantage? You had 14 seconds coming out of the pit, coming into the final stint. Did you expect that sort of advantage at that point of the race?
No, to be honest, I didn't know that we would have that much advantage. But yeah, I was searching off track, so there is no room for error, and I think other teams took the drive-through, and that's why we were that far in front.
Well, indeed, Oscar, a brilliant race from you to take the win tonight. And how does that leave you coming into to the 24 hours of Zolder? We heard the 18 Anaj car talking about having to take a cautious approach, but I guess for you it's going to be more of an all-out assault on that final 24-hour race of the season.
Yeah, we will just prepare the best we can, and yeah, we will see if the pace is good or not, but it's a long race, and once again, not a lot of off-track, so we will have to be patient on the traffic, which is not easy on Zolder, and just took the right opportunities, and then we will see. We can do the race before it starts.
Oscar, again, congratulations on a brilliant victory and a very, very strong drive today, fully deserved. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Thanks to all the drivers from Valkyrie for the practice. And yeah, Gaetan did an amazing job, so thanks to him. And yeah, everybody who participated to that win.
Well, to you as well, Oscar. Thanks for joining us here post-race. We hope to get a chance to talk to you after the final race there at the 24 Hours of Zolder.
Thank you. Ciao.
Cheers. So that was Oscar Pai, race winner in BLC1. Brilliant drive from them tonight. And so it seems that'll be the off-rounding moments of the broadcast for tonight. For myself and Edward May, indeed. It's been brilliant having you along here for the virtual Belcar series, the 5th round of action from Nürburgring. Remember to give the video a like. Remember to subscribe to the channel to be notified of what's going on in the world of the virtual Belcar series. Of course, thanks to the series organizers, Ronald, Andy, and the gang, and of course, all of the sponsors that help us make it possible in the long run. And with that said, we will be back on the weekend of, well, if I recall correctly, that's December
10th and 11th of December.
Indeed, 10th and 11th it is. And we're going to be back there, Edward, myself, and a bunch of people, hopefully. Maybe not. We'll see. We're not quite sure yet
Ian
because
has to just lapping
people-
Zolder for 24 hours.
people
Tune
are
in.
hard to get a hold of these days. But if not, we will be there at the very, very, very least, guiding you through the action for the final Belcar race of the season. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure having you all along. And until then, from Edward and myself, all I can say is take care, have fun, and bye-bye.